What's up, guys? This is Hyce, and today we're doing our first ever Railroad 101 Q&A stream. And God, you have to stare at my face. How weird is that? We'll see how this goes. I've got a number of questions from you guys that you guys left on a couple of different posts I put out in advance. And then we'll also be taking live questions. I'm joined by Mikkely. Say hello.
No.
Okay, well,
Refuse.
he's just Mikkely. It's just is what it is.
I'm disciplining Carlbot at the moment.
Oh, well, Carl must be disciplined. This is very true. Darn, Carl. Yeah, Mikkely's going to be taking your questions from live chat as well. And so if we have any come up while I'm in the middle of an explanation, don't worry, Mikkely will grab them, and then we'll be kind of going from there. So anyways, let's get rolling here. I got some questions that were like just specific to me that will stroke my ego later. Let's talk about a couple train things first. So I had a couple questions come up about coal specifically. So the first one is Sir Liv asked, what does it mean for coal to have gone stale when left in a tender or storage bunker for too long? And this isn't really something that I've dealt with personally. I'm assuming there's science behind it where some of the volatility of the coal breaks down over time, but I don't really know. It's not something that we commonly have to deal with. I mean, even when you have old coal in the pile, it still seems to burn pretty fine, even if it's a couple of years old. It's usually more the grade of coal or where you got the coal from that causes more of the problems that you can have. So I'd imagine it's one of those couple things. So the next one was from Satiric asking that they've heard that Talonland Railways over in the UK has had to switch to alternative fuels to continue running its coal-fired engines. Where does the museum get its coal? Do we have a long-term supply for coal, or is there a possibility we'd ever need to switch to a different fuel source? Well, we hope not. We do get our coal from the King Coal Mine in Hesperus, Colorado, which is down southwest of Durango, I think. And that's where the Durango and Silverton gets their coal. Cumbres and Toltec gets their coal there. I think the Nevada Northern does as well. And it seems to be doing okay. So that's, knock on wood. We're pretty happy with that. They did have a winter shutdown one year, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, because of a ridiculous amount of snow. And we had to experiment with a couple other coal suppliers, and that was just a disaster. So here's hoping that doesn't happen again. Ultimately, I'm sure the mine will close at some point in the future, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, I don't know. But at that point, we would likely convert the engines to oil like everybody else, which, it's just kind of the name of the game. We'd prefer to keep them on the historical fuel as long as we can because it helps tell the Colorado Railroad story. But yeah, if we have to, we will. But that's some amount of steam running is more important than having something just on display. It helps tell the story better and brings more folks in. So hopefully that day is far, far, far in the future. Hopefully I won't see it in my lifetime, but you never know. So okay, so those were the couple about coal. And now I kind of got a bunch that kind of fit into school, college, railroading as a career in general. So I kind of want to jump through some of those. Legionnaire's company asked, what schooling did you need to go to for my job with the railroad signals? And I really you kind of had to have a mechanical engineer, or not a mechanical engineering degree, just an engineering degree to kind of get into the field at all. That said, I was a mechie, and that wasn't really applicable to the signal stuff at all. Like electrical engineering would have been a lot better and a lot closer to what signals actually is, but just any degree really would get your foot in the door. Similarly, we had a couple other people asking a similar question, really. Goofy Gigabyte asking, what kind of college would you recommend to go to for steam engineering? And I would tell you, I would recommend you don't go to a college if you really want to do the steam stuff. You can learn everything you need for steam kind of on the job. There's not really a college that teaches a lot of the stuff that you need there. You certainly could, and I won't say that my mechanical engineering degree is not helpful, and that I learned a lot of really helpful things related to the locomotives and whatever in college. But if you really want to do the STEAM thing full time, I probably wouldn't save the expense. I wouldn't go to college and just go do the thing. I mean, it's better to know the trade and then try and learn the science on the side, I think, than explicitly going out there to get a mechanical engineering degree and go forward with it. So another related question on that, Christian Sluter asking, if you wanted to take any classes at college to benefit your work with steam locomotives, what are some classes you should take? And I mean, that kind of falls in again there, right? If you're already going to college and you want to learn a couple things, machine design would be a really good one. Mechanics of materials or anything on material science variety would be really, really helpful, because what really helps you understand a lot of the things that go wrong with steam locomotives is material science, and how the different steels, the different brass, why you use what material for what, and why it's important, and the importance of hardening and things, etc. That's really, really critical for steam things. Not to throw any shade, but I know of a railroad that recently launched the pistons out of its locomotive and blew up the cylinder heads on their locomotive because they didn't use a hardened key, and the key sheared off and the piston went straight through the front head. And, some of those little educational pieces would be very helpful. So anyway, material science, machine design, thermodynamics would be good too, fluid mechanics, as well. Not as critical. They scratch the nerd itch a little bit more, but to really help your work, the material stuff is really, really what helps. Let's see. And then we had two people asking about volunteering or working on the railroad. The gaming taco, I think. How did you get into volunteer work like you do? I signed up to be a volunteer and regularly showed up. That's kind of the name of the game there. You just kind of find a place that has volunteers. If they've got spots, sometimes there's, kind of politics with that or whatever, but, try and work your way in, show up regularly and do the thing. And then Strasburg Railfan 90, I'm interested in working on a heritage railroad, specifically Strasburg. Do you think it's worth working there full time? I quit my full-time railroad job to go work for the Colorado Railroad Museum, so I'm biased, and I would say yes. But it depends on your situation. The reality is a lot of these jobs don't pay that much. And I mean, in Strasburg, you're living amongst the Amish, so it's probably not too expensive. But in places like Denver or Seattle or whatever that are more expensive, it can be a little bit more challenging to make that decision. You might end up having to have roommates, or hope that you've got a relationship set up or something where you've got a significant other who can help pay, or something along those lines. So you really got to make sure it's the right decision for you, but it's definitely a great way to do the thing. Anyway, let's jump into a live question here. Mickey's got a big sheet of them already. It looks like a lot of activity in chat. I'm just trying to focus on explanations here. Let's see. Thoughts on MOW Fairmont pop carts? They're awesome. I've got footage of ours from the museum that I need to put up there. I've yet to find a good video to stick it in or anything, but we've got RGS number 1 at the museum. It lives in the pump house, and they're really, really cool and really, really helpful for inspections when you got a lot of right-of-way to do. Obviously at the museum it's just for fun for us. You can walk the entire museum alignment in 15 minutes, I'm sure. So quit tabbing away, Mick. You're making this hard. Have I seen the updates on the Pierre Marquette 1225? No. Is the flux capacitor plumbed off of the regulator or superheated turret? Flux capacitor is obviously plumbed off the superheated turret, which is why Back to the Future 3 is inaccurate, because no 1870s locomotive could go faster or could support it, because they didn't have superheat. So they should have had a superheated engine, but I guess Doc Brown probably had something else he figured out. Let's see. Is there a reason the blower can't be as strong for the exhaust drafting the fire, or is that just a design decision? There is a reason, and let's break out Microsoft Paint, everybody. Here we go. Okay. I don't really have a great... I might have a good picture for this. Let me look. Specifically talking about smoke box and blower and draft. I know I've got recent pictures because 346's box is open. That's a picture of Jeff cutting out tubes that's not flattering. We don't need to share that. He'll get mad at me. Let's see. I hope everyone's doing well today. It looks like there's a fair amount of activity in chat. It's been a good Monday. Been really, really busy lately with Day Out with Thomas and all that stuff going on. So, let's see. Okay. Well, you know what? We're going to ship it, and I don't have a picture handy. So, anyway, you're going to get a beautifully drawn Hyce MS Paint train. So, okay. Let's do this. So, you have a smoke box. It's a big circle. Oh, God. That's not even anywhere close. Okay. There's a tool for this. Let's be smart. There we go. Look at that. No, I don't want a pencil. I want a brush. There we go. So, you have your stack up here. And that's a little wide, but, you know, we'll pretend it's the SH282. Inside the smoke box, centered down below, you have the blast nozzle. And we're going to draw it kind of big, but the blast nozzle is literally a nozzle that takes the steam exhaust from the valves when it finishes, and they're basically plumbed in through the saddle into the blast nozzle itself. And the blast nozzle, I mean, it's almost like a rocket nozzle where it's designed to increase the flow. And it shoots up into the stack extension. And then they may be raised higher or lower to alter the draft that it goes through the tube. Sometimes they're down low, sometimes they're up higher. Just depends on the setup of the engine. But ultimately, what happens when you have the exhaust out the blast nozzle, the exhaust velocity, particularly when there's a lot of pressure behind it, of course, when the engine's working hard, but this nozzle gathers that velocity and basically necks it down and makes it go really, really fast. It actually causes what we call in fluid mechanics as a normal shock wave in the stack. And that is the chuff that you hear is literally a normal shock wave of pressure coming from that very high velocity steam, gas, everything that is then coming out there. And that draws low pressure, which then, of course, draws everything through the fire in the vacuum of the smoke box. So you're getting something that is like I don't want to say, it's not astrological, but it's like this huge event. They actually call them valve events that's causing a actual surge in pressure waves to go through the stack. And then you have the blower, which is an 1.25 inch pipe that comes up here, at least on our engines, they're 1.25 inch. 1.25 inch pipe that comes through, and it just vents. Some engines are fancy, and they have a blower ring that sits around the blast nozzle and has multiple outlets, you know, so that you get even drafting. But our good old K37 that they were trying to be cheap with because they were trying to piss off Baldwin has just a pipe that vents out, and so do the little engines too. So actually, if you look at them from the front, you'll see more of the exhaust coming up over on the fireman's side than the engineer side, just with the way that it's set up. But even with this pipe running like super wide open valve, crazy amounts of blower, which can draft the fire pretty hot, and probably equivalent to a slow working of the steam locomotive, if I had to guess. We try not to run the blower that stinking hot, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But going up the stack, I mean, it's just nothing compared to the shock wave that's created. You can't get a shock wave from this consistent flow just because there's no nozzle, there's no pressure set up for this. So that's kind of what's going on there. Anyway, that was MS Paint. I'm sure we'll come back to it. Let's see. Do we have any other related smokeboxy questions in there? I don't think so. Let me see about... Do I have any in my questions that I have as I scroll through? I don't know. I don't think so. Anyways, that is actually kind of related to one question that deserves a whole video. Let's go back to MS Paint. How do injectors work? Asked by Aiden Smith. Aiden Smith. And that is a question that deserves its own video. And it deserves me looking at my fluid mechanics textbook a couple more times to remember what I learned 10 years ago. Well, not close to 10 years ago. Whatever. You get the idea. But basically, when you have an injector on a locomotive, you've got the injector body, and you have steam that's plumbed in on the one side. You have water that's plumbed in over here, and you have an overflow. And then you have the delivery line that we talked about. And inside the injector, there's a series of nozzles. And really the way that an injector works is based on fluid mechanics through converging and diverging nozzles, where the steam comes in that steam line, and it goes through a converging diverging nozzle first, I believe. So we take steam at really high pressure, low velocity. We make it go really, really, really fast through the throat here. It actually goes supersonic. And then when it comes out the converging nozzle, it creates a vacuum in here. And the vacuum draws the water in, and that comes from our water pipe. They go together in another converging nozzle. And then this is where the steam converts into water. It condenses back to water, and the water starts to pick up some speed. So you get a mixture just there. And this is where your overflow pipe is. And so when you prime the injector, you're sending water and steam through. The steam turns into water. The water heats up, speeds up. So you get things moving quickly here, and you get the flow established out the overflow. And then when you go to force, you force it through yet another, and I believe, again, it is a converging, diverging nozzle, where we take the flow, which is now water instead of gas. And so theoretically, it is... there's no steam in it, hopefully, which if there is steam in it, it doesn't work, and you break, and the water goes out the overflow again. But what happens, or I guess steam technically at that point. But anyway, what happens here is that the water speeds up really fast, but it can't get beyond Mach 1 because we're talking about a fluid that is a liquid, not a fluid that's a gas. So you've choked the flow through the throat of the nozzle. And then when it converges, it creates high pressure at a lower speed as it comes out. And then this pressure ends up being a higher pressure than the boiler pressure. So when you get down to the pipe, you get to the check valve, you have a higher pressure hitting the check valve, and you can pop the check valve open. And that's what allows the water to go through. It seems like I'm taking boiler pressure and making it open something that is boiler pressure. That doesn't make sense, but it's this combination of several fluid nozzles that do fluid mechanics black magic, for lack of a better term. And again, I'd have to go through my textbooks and go really, really into the science to really explain this in more detail, which is why I haven't bothered to make a video about it. But that's kind of what goes on there. So anyway, nozzles, yay, physics, hooray. Anyways, let's see. What do we have on questions from chat? I am not fast enough for this, but these things these things take time to explain. How hard is it to convert an engine to oil? Do you just add a few modifications, or does it need a whole new firebox? It's usually just modifications. I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes engines that were, in service needed a little bit more, or needed their firebox updated. But what is Jake sending me? The stream is constantly freaking out. Is there a problem with the stream? Mick, anyone? Yes?
Stream looks fine on my end.
Well, it sucks
Unless
to suck,
he's talking
Jake.
about the Discord stream in which I'm streaming a Word document.
This is very critical. Anyway, so the big thing with an oil burner versus coal burner is you need to have the airflow set up and the burner set up. So you got to remove the ash pan. You got to put in basically a floor of the firebox, remove all the grates, set up dampers and damper controls, which depending on the engine might be a pain in the butt. And then find a way to plumb the burner in and get that set up, and then deal with tender conversion too. But it really doesn't require a new firebox. It's not ideal to use some kinds of coal burning fireboxes for oil, but you can definitely do it because oil burning fireboxes are designed a little differently than a coal burning firebox depending on the engine. But obviously the engines at the Durango and Silverton and the 489 at the Cumbres and Toltec are doing great with their oil conversions. So definitely in service and able to be efficient and all that stuff. So not too much rocket surgery to it. Let's see. What's the most powerful narrow gauge locomotive that I've seen in person myself is the Denver and Grand Western 491. I'm actually not aware of any ones that are more powerful. I'm sure there are, particularly if you're counting like Cape gauge and stuff. But I don't know them off the top of my head. Okay, I'm going to go back to a couple questions asked previously. Hang on, but we've got a top chat. Let's see. From Mark. Thank you for the top chat. Did you end up working in the industry after being a rail fan, or did you become a rail fan after you started working in the industry? I've been cuckoo for choo-choo my whole life, as my former coworker from Sound Transit used to say. When I was 2 years old, my granddad showed me his Lionel layout in the basement, and I've just been addicted ever since. I've never been like a super like go out foamer rail fan, take pictures. I'm definitely a foamer, but I've not been like a, oh yeah, I'm going to go watch trains kind of person. But if I see them, I enjoy them, and definitely got into the industry. Not because of that. I sort of fell backwards into the industry. I wasn't planning on working in trains, and then here I am. So it's kind of been an interesting career path, but yeah. Anyway, let's see. What are my thoughts on the T1 Trust? T1 Trust is cool. This is asked by Railfan105. You think it's pretty cool, but you've heard people say it's a waste of time and money. Well, there's a whole argument right there. Isn't all of this a waste of time and money? Why are we making old locomotives work that, I mean, they're for entertainment. It's for a museum. It's not for like a purpose of we need to do this to continue humanity. It's all technically kind of a waste of money by some arguments. So to pull out, or rebuild an engine from scratch, is it a waste of time and money? Well, yeah, but so's the rest of the industry. Is it a waste of time and money compared to the rest of the industry? Perhaps some people would say that. I mean, it would be cheaper to put something in service, probably pull something out of the weeds than build it from scratch, but there aren't any of these engines left, and they're trying to save money where they can by using the tender that they bought. That was one that still existed as the same type, I think. I don't know if it necessarily ran behind a T1, but it's the same kind as the T1 would have had, at least. So I think it's really cool that they're doing that. I mean, you're building a locomotive that was frankly badass in its day, and you're going to bring it back and run it. And the mechanical engineering that they're doing and all the stuff that they show off with it just tickles my nerd side really, really well. So I don't know. I'm really excited by the whole T1 Trust thing. I've always thought that they're kind of batshit insane, and I wasn't sure they would be able to do it, but the proof is in the pudding so far. They have the hardest part left to do with the frame left to do, because the frame was originally one casting. And nobody can cast an 80-foot thing anymore. So it just kind of is what it is. But definitely a very cool project, and it's going to be exciting to see. And I imagine they'll eventually get there. They've definitely got backing and the right people behind it, it seems. So I'm excited to see it come to life. I'd love to go see the engine and talk to the mechanical engineers behind it too, because the SolidWorks screenshots that they share just get me... Yeah, I nerd out a little bit. Midland 1072 Productions, thank you for the top chat. Even Hyce came when talking about the oil conversions, kind of a follow-up. Would an oil conversion affect tractive effort? If it doesn't change the boiler pressure, it does not change the tractive effort. This is one thing that a lot of people get wrong with locomotives, or have a misunderstanding about with locomotives. Tractive effort is wheel size, piston stroke and diameter, and boiler pressure plus a coefficient. That's it. Has nothing to do with the fire, has nothing to do with that. If you can make 175 psi, you're making that tractive effort. That is that. Smaller wheels, more tractive effort. Bigger wheels, less tractive effort. More piston stroke, more piston area, more tractive effort. More boiler pressure, more tractive effort. There's nothing else that affects it. So, anyways, thank you for the top chat. Mark, thank you for the top chat as well. Thanks for the reply. Also wanted to say thanks for the 101 series. Your interest in trains comes from playing Factorio and Minecraft, so it's cool to learn more about how it all works in the real world. Well, right on. I'm glad. Stick Stop the Machine Gaming, thank you for the top chat. Jake, you're here. Hi. You want to say hello? No, he's scared. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
There he is.
I'm not scared. I'm just not trying to make noise that doesn't matter.
Well, much appreciated. What makes Walshart's valve gear better than something like externally mounted Stephenson gear? He's going to ask.
I want to point out that I have actually seen externally mounted Stephenson gear.
I've seen it once or twice too myself. That's kind of out there-ish, but yeah. Valve gear is one of those complex beasts, and I honestly would need to really do more research to tell you why one would be better than the other. So,
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I could start doing guesses and start down that path, but I wouldn't want to mislead people with inaccurate stuff. Obviously, we've run and maintained stuff with Stephenson and Walsharts at the museum, and I've dealt with both. But the only valve gears that I could tell you one is innately better than the other is Baker is innately better than Walsharts, and that's because they're almost exactly the same, but Baker only uses pins, so it wears evenly, and Walsharts doesn't. So brand new, they're both the same and equal, but over time, Walsharts wears out in a weird way, and Baker doesn't. And that is the only definitive, yep, that's a valve gear thing I can tell you for sure.
Okay, cool. I have one more question. I do not intend to dominate. Eccentrics and eccentric straps on Stephenson's valve gear. Do those have a stupid amount of wear like I think they do?
They're really, 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 really hard so that they try not to wear, and you really, really have to keep them very well lubricated. And if you don't keep them lubricated with the right oil, they will wear out extremely quickly. But if you keep them lubricated with the right ridiculously heavy oil, they seem to do pretty good. And actually, if I really had to think about it now, that would be the biggest reason why Walsharts is better than Stephenson, is you're not dealing with the wear of the eccentrics, because those eccentrics are, yeah, they do a spinny rubby, for a lack of a technical term.
Mark, people want to know who's behind you.
Who's behind me? It's me. That's the secret. Yeah, this all the rooms in this place have mirrors on both of the on the closet doors, which makes it a little strange, but you know, that's that. So I'm expecting memes from that later. Anyway. Another top chat. Thank you, Blackjack Actual, $5. Can steam be used to put out a fire? For example, a wildfire started by the Loco. Yes, kind of. A lot of locomotives, including some of our own, actually have firefighting equipment. And it's not steam, it's the flow from the injector that we use in most cases, though I wouldn't be surprised if there were engines in history more dedicated to firefighting that had some other setups for it. But ultimately, once steam gets out of the boiler, it pretty rapidly condenses, as you can see with a blowdown. So you could probably try and put out a fire with one, and we've certainly put out fires at the museum with 20's firefighting equipment. Which is basically a fire hose that we can attach to the branch pipe off the injector and then run the injector and open a valve and close a valve, and then we start spraying. But next time we have it steamed up, I'll do a video on that. I see I've got Armagon in here. I don't know if Armagon knows any history about any fun engines that did firefighting service or anything like that.
I do. The
Let's
JW
share.
Boker, for example, at the Virginia and Truckee.
How was it equipped? Did it just have a hose, or did it have like manifolds or anything?
You can actually see in its builder photo, it actually had an entire pump system mounted on top of the engine boiler. That's why the bell is, I think it's mounted directly on top of the sand dome, which is a really cursed arrangement. Basically, how this went down was it would pump water, I think, out of the tender or out of a water cart it was carrying with it, and then it would just spray it onto the tracks. I don't know if it actually did do any firefighting in its service, but I mean, the Boker has an interesting history as far as its naming goes, because, you know, it was from a era when the Virginian truckies kept on naming engines after employees and was named after their master mechanic. But then he showed up drunk one day at the shop and he was immediately fired, and the engine was renamed to Mexico. So that was funny, I guess.
A railroad that fired someone for showing up drunk? That feels like the railroad wouldn't have any employees anymore back in the day. I'm trying to pull up.
If you look at the Virginian truckies employee rules, they're extremely strict. Like, if you show up like 5 minutes late to work, that might have been grounds for expulsion. I'm not sure, but
Interesting.
It's just like, oh my god, they were very stringent about what they were doing.
Okay, here I found the picture that I'm assuming you're talking about of the JW Boker back in the day, and yeah, you can see it's got like a little, like almost like a steam traction engine set on top. So presumably, yeah, that would be what they ran to run the firefighting equipment. That's kind of neat. Cool. Well, thank you.
Waiting for it to pop up on stream.
There
if
it
you're
is.
Showing... Yep, that's it.
Sweet. Well, thank you for sharing, Armagon.
You are most welcome.
Okay, Mickley, what do we got as far as more questions here? Let's see. From Tweetsy Railroader, 2 questions. Which engine of the Colorado Railroad Museum is my favorite to operate? I could answer that question, but I would have to kill you because the engines would kill me, so I can't answer that question. And that actually, I need to make a video about that because I get asked that all the time. And I think I've got an interesting, thoughtful answer that it deserves a whole video, so we'll do that at some point. So, teehee. And then the second question is, between the 4 DNRGW Mikados, which engine overall the best in terms of statistics and ease of operation? Interesting. I want to make a series talking about all 4 of the Ks, and I want to get a little bit more hands-on and get footage of the 28s, the 27 really, because I've really only dealt with the 36s and 37s. And I know a lot about the 27s and 28s, but it feels kind of baseless because I haven't really operated them or fired them or anything. But I fired the 36 and the 37, and from what I had to, if I had to guess, the 36 is probably the best. The 28 might be pretty close there too. The 28s are notoriously like the nicest riding. They call them the sport model and all that stuff, and they apparently ride really nice. K37s ride like a broken lumber wagon when you go through all the dual gauge switches in the museum. Yeah, it's a thing. But the 36s have a really, really easy, nice throttle with all the crazy linkage that's set up. You could use a finger or 2 to open and close the throttle. The firebox is not gigantic, which is really nice to fire. And then the reverse taper course into the cab makes the back head not gigantic, which means that the cab's a little bit more ergonomic than a K37 cab. So the K36s, I mean, there's a reason that 9 of the 10 still exist, and the only one that doesn't exist, like, catastrophically fell over in the turntable pit. Like, it was not going to get fixed. So, anyway. CNS Railway Society member for 4 months. Glad you made it to 4 months, Justin. Red Lamp. 346 is special to you. How often is work being done on her? Work is slowing down a little. You'd like to offer a hand. Well, progress is slow because we have events to do, and that's just kind of the name of the game right now. We still have more tubes to cut out, and once we get all the tubes cut out, it's going to be an assessment and go from there. But with 20 needing to get put back together and having a lot of holes reamed and etc., that needed some machine work, and Polar coming up, and we need 20 and 491 to not hate ourselves with inspections. 346 is on the back burner at the moment, but I imagine once we get into Polar and things start going like that, 346 is going to start progressing because we should hopefully have enough crew to get it done. But I mean, if you want to come help, by all means. All right, what do we got for questions coming up there, Mick? Do I ever think supersonic trains will exist? Maybe with maglev, but or hyperloop stuff, but those are not necessarily trains like we know them. So you won't get a conventional train that does, put it that way. Let's see. You've heard of diesel locomotives that could adjust between multiple different gauges. Was there ever a steam engine that could do that? Not one that I've heard of. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some bizarro, weirdo model that is there, but yeah, not that I know of. Did I study thermodynamics? Yes, I got a mechanical engineering degree, and thermo was one of the painful courses that we had to take. Am I able to go to other museums and run their locomotives? Presumably, if I had a working relationship with them and could work that out or set up as volunteer, and get qualified, I would imagine that I could. I have not, but I've had a couple railroads and museum groups that have talked to me about potentially doing content or having me come out. And so that's very exciting, and I hope that it can happen, but more to come on that down the road. Cripple X89, thank you for the top chat. I can't remember if that's euros or pounds. I think it's euros. Yeah, pounds is slightly different. 4.99 euros. Do you have any experience with European steam locomotives, and are there interesting differences? I have no experience with them hands-on, but looking at them, I mean, they look totally different, and there's a lot of different design decisions. Stares wildly at Britain, where everything is hidden behind a cover or cowling, and you don't like to maintain things other than wipe them down every day. But I mean, operationally, they're pretty similar, of course, but the maintenance side and the mechanic side gets pretty different with a lot of that sort of stuff. From Brett, presumably my Brett, Mr. Dr. Professor Hyce. That's Mr. Dr. Professor PhD to you, bucko. What kind of content? Mickley, what is going on? I'm trying to read, and what Jake was complaining about is now happening to me, I guess. What kind of content do you have in the pipeline for the future of the channel? Oh, look, Brett wants to plug him being on the channel. Look at that. The one thing, we need to figure out when we can film that, by the way. Brett Layton and I have been scheming for months about doing more fun videos like the Jeopardy videos, but we're trying to do it in a way that is more interesting for you guys, and being straight up honest, gets more people to click on the video on YouTube. Because the Jeopardy videos were hilarious to film, and they were super funny, but they did worse than everything else I've put out on the channel because there's no narrative and there's no story. So we're basically going to be starting a podcast style video where we basically just rip off Tom Scott. Sorry, Tom, if you watch this, I doubt you will. But anyways, we're basically going to rip off Tom Scott and do some of the Citation Needed stuff where we do Citation Needed as a game about train stuff, and then also two of these people are lying, but again about train stuff. So it'll be all of us in the same room. We're gonna have a rotating guest as our fourth, because our running joke is that we're 3/4 of one idiot, and we're in search of our last quarter to make us a whole idiot. So it's gonna be a whole fun thing, and it should be hopefully really, really funny and hopefully really interesting for people to actually watch too and garner some clicks on the internet. So I'm excited for that, but we gotta find time to film that and get together. And the blue choo-choo that is at the museum is here, and days are long and things. So Radioactive 4001, got a question? Could not find anything about this in my Discord. In one of the videos, the patrons was just Hyce, even though you're an ES&D conductor. Apologies for that. We wanted to have a fun inside joke. There was a day where everyone, not everyone, but like something like 30 or 40 people, organized by Mickley, all changed, or maybe it was Pharma. One of you two. You're both here.
It was Pharma. I can't take credit for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Pharma pranked me, and everyone changed their icons to Hyce, to the bird, and then everyone changed their name to Hyce, and I just kept getting pinged from Discord. I finally came up here and got on my computer, and there was like 30 Hyces in the voice chat. So that's where the joke comes from. I apologize that it messed with the normal credits at the end, but it was a little too funny to leave lie, I think. So Yeah, the great heisting of 2022.
Do we have any screenshots of that?
I have some.
I'm sure. Yeah, if someone can.
And I also made like a variety of like modified Heist icons. Like you could almost make like a Pokemon game out of them.
Oh boy, I'm glad. Oh, I'm now seeing that I'm missing things in VC text. We're gonna go back here. Wings sent in this picture of an SP engine with firefighting equipment, and that's a lot of firefighting equipment. Good heavens, look at that. That's a whole team. Bunch of hoses and some fixed nozzle. That thing is goofy. How long was that set up like that? Or is it just for one fire, or... Wings is not here, but they sent this picture. So enjoy it.
I believe the locomotive itself only has 2 nozzles. The others are just auxiliaries that are hooked up to a hose on the tender.
Oh, that's cool. That's neat.
Yeah, because the steam pump is between the sand and steam domes, and then you have 2 long pipes running to the nozzles by the headlight along the sides of the boiler.
It's just wacky looking, but really cool. Okay, well, thanks for that, Wings. Blue Jacket Warrior with the top chat, thank you. You're on the road and your tender can no longer feed water due to a malfunction. How do you put the fire out in a hurry, or is it just get the choo-choo in an isolated place and hope it doesn't go boom? Well, if you stop being able to feed for some reason, hopefully you still have lots of water in the boiler, and then it is the name of the game is basically stop, so you prevent any sloshing or moving or anything of that nature with all the water, and then hopefully you don't have to dump the fire. But if you're in a position where you don't have enough water, yeah, you dump the grates as fast as you can and shake it and dump the pan and set the track on fire, because that's better than blowing up the locomotive. So yeah, one of the big mistakes you can make is if the water is too low, if you start dumping a bunch of cold water in, like if you get the injector to work for whatever reason, the rush of cold water can also act as a detonator and blow the engine up, because you can have super cold water hitting the already hot steel. So if you didn't heat it up enough to cause a bubble or cause the crown sheet to slip off of the bolts, the crown bolts, and then turn the locomotive into a giant steel trebuchet, if you've not hit that point, you can press one button and make it happen with the injector. So yeah, usually it's definitely shake the grates and pray. But yeah, thankfully usually doesn't happen. That's never happened to me. I've never heard of it happening to anyone I know either. So if you stop being able to put water in, yeah, you should stop running the choo-choo. Anyway, I'm going to go to a couple questions that were coming from the posts originally. How am I doing? From Quebec Gamer, quite well. And then, what is the story behind my GTO? Ooh, just have to talk about that, don't we? My GTO is the only car I own, and I got it in early 2020. I was about to go buy a motorcycle. I had been taking classes to learn to ride a motorcycle and everything, and I was about to go buy one, and so I had a little cash, and I got Facebook advertised the Facebook Marketplace listing of the GTO to me, and it was like, huh, GTO, that's my second favorite car all time, you know, okay, let's click see what it is, and it's like, it's a pretty good price. Oh, it's a 4-speed, and oh, okay, yeah, I need to go see this. And so I texted the guy, I was up in Bellingham, Washington, drove up there, next day, looked at it, and, you know, it far from perfect, but looks great, and ran great, and drove pretty good. So it was like, okay, you know, and I paid him $1,000 to hold the car for me till I could get the rest of the cash ready, and ended up buying the car, and he trailered it down for me from Bellingham back down to Seattle, and then I've just been working on it and trying to make updates ever since. And if you haven't seen the GTO, it's in the day of a life of a Steam volunteer video. It stars kind of in the intro bit, so I love that car. It's numbers matching, original engine, original transmission, and it doesn't go super fast. It's not super quick. It's not a show car, but it is just the vibe. I love the darn thing. So, yeah.
That demands pictures.
Oh, okay, fine. I had one pulled up, but I didn't I didn't change my scene. Let me grab it again. Yeah, it's a 1968 GTO, so it's the year before they made the Judge. Let's see if we can get a recent-ish picture. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Here you go. This is one of the money shots here. This is the GTO, and pay no mind that the right headlight cover is being held up by a rock because it doesn't line up with the grill correctly normally. And then this is my 68 SG that I got maybe 6 months ago. So I always wanted a 68 SG, and then once I got the GTO, it's like, okay, the car and the guitar match, you know, okay, so it's fun. But love that thing. It's not a show car by any means. The paint looks pretty good from about 15 feet away, but you can see the nose paint's rubbed off. It's got the wrong mirror. The interior's okay. The seats need to be totally redone. But it's a lot of fun. Let's see. Do I have... Here's the fun inside under the hood. All very pixely because Google doesn't want to load the picture. There we go. Chrome air cleaner. Garbage wiring. The wiring in the car is a disaster. I need to redo it. But a lot of V8 under that hood. It's a 400 cubic inch engine, so it's a lot of fun. Makes a lot of good noises.
The wiring like a new harness? Or is that something you would have to home make?
They make harnesses for all these. Thankfully, you can like buy every part for these cars aftermarket on like OPGI or Year One or whoever. And thankfully, you know, it's pretty easy. But it's it's just spaghetti under the dash. It's disgusting, and the plug wires are gross. And yeah, when I originally bought it, it had these awful American racing wheels on it, and I loved the stock mag wheels. It also had that stupid decal on the window. So I had to, do some work. I rebuilt the front suspension because I got the wheels, like original set of 68 wheels. I restored them. I was so ready to put them on the car, and I took the front wheels off, and then I saw the front suspension, the ball joints and the bushings up close with the wheel out of the way, and I was like, I've been driving this. Yeah, the front suspension was toast. It was gone. It was done. The shocks were ruined. The ball joints were ruined. I had half of one bushing left on the driver's side upper control arm. There's supposed to be two, and I had half of one. So as soon as I took the steering loose, you could move the wheel like 20 degrees, or the steering knuckle like 20 degrees because the suspension was so trashed. But yeah, so that it was supposed to be a wheel change out, and it ended up being a suspension rebuild. So, it was fun. Back to trains. Cars are fun, but we're here for choo-choos. Let's see.
Are we?
I hope so. Michael Perot, if I had to guess at your last name, sorry. I know it's totally unrealistic, but could a narrow gauge engine pull a standard gauge car on dual gauge track, or would the couplings not line up? Not realistic. That was like the standard operating practice for the Rio Grande. I need to find a picture. Hang on. Let me go. Denver Public Library has lots of great pictures. And I'm going to... Oh, you do? Good. Yeah. I'm going to change myself on Discord to voice activity because I've been pushed to talk this whole time, and that's just been me constantly holding it. Oh, it wasn't... Well, idler car, yeah, but there's a picture of 491 specifically pulling like 40 box cars on the Valley line. That is awesome. So anyway, let's change
I did
scenes.
include this question specifically because I knew their unrealistic thing was wrong.
So the Rio Grande had these idler cars, which we have one at the museum where there's a tri-coupler pocket. So the tall one is the standard gauge one. And then you have another coupler that can either be on 3-foot one side bias or 3-foot other side bias. And it was regular to see a K37 going down the Valley line hauling a bunch of 40-foot boxcars. There's a great picture of 491 somewhere that has it like literally hauling like a 40-car train of boxcars all by itself, just putting down the Valley line. And if good, Brett. Thank you, Brett. Brett is listening. Here it is. Or one of them. That's not the one I was thinking of, actually. But yeah, 491 with a bunch of giant refrigerator cars. So
I think I found the one you were thinking of.
Yes, you
It's
did.
the-
Yeah, actually, that
the
might
same
be
picture.
the same train. Actually, I'm sure it is from the
Looks like
same
the
day.
same train.
But yeah, on the Valley Line north of Alamosa, there's Peaches and a bunch of refrigerator cars and boxcars just doing the thing. So yeah, narrow gauge and standard gauge definitely mixed. And 491's old tender that's behind the 494. We don't need to talk about K37 tender swapping. Let's not get into that. The tender that she used to have has a tri-coupler pocket on the back of it, so it didn't even need an idler car for sometimes. And then like DNRGW 50 has a T-slotted coupler that you can actually move, and I think it's even hydraulic or pneumatic or something. You can actually move the coupler wherever, and they used it for switching out of Durango. So the dual gauge standard gauge was like all the time. And now actually I need to find another picture. Hang on, because this was one of my favorite stupid moments from the Railroad Museum. Was the time that we were the only steam locomotive pulling Union Pacific passenger cars.
In the meantime, would you like to know how NDM did it?
Sure, why not? They did crazy stuff.
They just mounted their narrow gauge couplers at standard gauge height and allowed them to swing out laterally farther. So you just couple it diagonally across the dual gauge.
Well, that's only kind of cursed.
I mean, polling was also a thing, even on standard gauge railroads. You could just straight up push a car that was
Yeah.
on the other track.
Yeah.
Apparently, narrow gauge didn't do polling a whole lot.
All the K36s have polling pockets, but I mean, polling is that's just bad. Was it 2014 or 2015?
I think Pharma has a comment he wants to add.
Sure.
I added the comment. I was waiting for him to notice.
Oh.
It's in chat.
Anyway, yeah, here's 491, freshly put back in service, and we had to scoot an 85-foot Union Pacific streamlined coach. We had to move it like 15 feet forward to block off the edge of the turntable because we didn't have chains at that time. And so we knuckled right into it on quad rail and pulled it forward, and it didn't look all that wrong, which was kind of hilarious. So, yeah. So standard gauge, narrow gauge, that's not unrealistic at all. That is the prototype. Let's see. Armagon, thoughts on standard gauge logging engines? Yes. Oh, I guess he left the chat. Oh well. Standard gauge logging engines, I mean, they're neat. A highball, of course. Very neat as the hopeful new video game, right? That people are working on. That kind of originated out of my Discord, which is kind of interesting. But logging engines, geared engines are just they're just vibrational disasters. You look up high cycle fatigue in the dictionary, and it's just a picture of a climax. God, somewhere I have it. It's in my Discord. I think it's pinned in trains. Let me see. There's a clip of the climax on Mount Rainier Scenic back in like the 90s, and it was hauling something. And I mean, it is just jumping. Like, it's ridiculous. No.
How much thread locker do you need on those things?
All of it. Where's the pins? There it is. Here we go. Cheers to Car Nuts for this video, and hopefully YouTube doesn't get mad at me for showing a YouTube video on YouTube. But this is thanks to Car Nuts, or maybe I shouldn't say so they don't get mad, but yeah, this is why logging engines are bad.
I enjoy that we can see you looking for that video just in the mirror.
I'm glad. Just jiggly, bouncy. It's fine.
That does not look fun.
I'd imagine that would be even worse on a Shay with it all being offset to one side.
The Shays are a little bit better because there's 3 cylinders, so it's not quite as
so
oscillating.
You can balance that, huh?
But yeah, there's Tim. Poor Tim.
Goodness.
Just getting
That
vibrated
wants
out of
to-
his seat.
Chat wants to know if this is better or worse than Thomas.
This is a lot worse than Thomas, but Thomas sounds like you're in a dumpster getting hit with sledgehammers, so it's a worse audio experience, but less painful physically. Emotionally, probably about the same. But anyways, yeah, that's why logging engine's bad. Okay, let's see. Hello, Sir Hyce from Weird 101. Have you ever experienced any major failure on a locomotive? What constitutes a major failure? I wasn't
Almost dying.
well, I mean, 491 did launch a bit at me, but we weren't running it. We were doing maintenance. I have it. I have the bit. Where is it?
Oh,
yes.
You have the bit that 91 tried to unalive you with?
Yes, I do. It's this. This is what we call a bullet, a missile, a reason Hyce almost dead. So this is a flexible stable cap. It is what goes over a flexible stable, which we could probably talk about in MS Paint. I think we talked about them in the original Steam 101 video. But this is one type of cap, and we were doing the cap inspection on the 491, which had not been done since like 1960 something. And it's supposed to be done every 3 years. And of course, because bad practices and 491 was not restored, was put in service in probably a engineeringly unsound way, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. We didn't do the cap inspection right away, so it was like 2015, 2016 when we finally were pulling these off to look at the bolts. And all the bolts were fine, so it was fine, but, maybe make sure you restore locomotives the right way. Don't be an idiot, and don't learn from bad people. Anyways, so these caps hadn't been taken off since the 60s. So as you may know, if you've worked on things that are old and things that have touched water and hot and things don't like to come apart, and so we couldn't get them off. I had 5 feet of wrench and it wouldn't rotate, so I got out the liquid wrench, aka the acetylene torch, and I started lightly heating them until they glowed just a little bit, just the first signs of color, put the socket on it, and then they would, come off pretty freely. You'd still have to wrench on it pretty hard with about a 3-foot breaker bar, but they were coming off. And I don't understand to this day exactly how this happened, but we had drained the boiler, but we hadn't pulled the corner plugs out, and that was something that we should have done. I won't throw my coworker who said he did under the bus. I should have checked myself too. But there was still some water at the lowest level, so when I got to the bottom of the row of these caps, I'd done like 8 of them or whatever, I got to this one, and I heated it for like 20 seconds, and then it sounded like someone had fired a shotgun directly in front of my face. I couldn't hear anything. This had teleported somewhere else. And I don't remember even turning my torch off, but it blew the torch out. I don't remember shutting the valves, but I mean, that was the loudest thing I've ever experienced. And this cap rocketed off the boiler, and you can see where it hit the wheel, where it's dented. That's from hitting the flange of the drive wheel, the number 4 driver. It flew across the shop. We found it in stall 5, and I was working in stall 1. So it flew across the shop after it hit the driver. And I'm just extremely lucky that it rocketed off and bounced out. Because if had it bounced in, it would have gone straight through my face. And yeah, you wouldn't be getting any of this YouTube content right now. But it was a strong enough blast that there was a radio 10 or 15 feet away, and it blew the cones out the radio. Blew out the speakers. That is how big the concussion was. And my boss ran from his office, which was in the soundproof visitor gallery behind 2 doors in soundproofing, and he ran in because he thought the acetylene bottle blew up. That's how loud it was. So yeah, flash boil that had expanded just enough to slip off the threads and rocketed off violently. And yeah, this is my paperweight that is a proof of mortality. Or your reminder that you could be dead and gone any day of the week. So that's a fun little thing. Let's see. Tweetsy Railroader, when it comes to personal preference, do you prefer to operate during Day Out with Thomas or Polar Express? When we ran Steam, the Day Out with Thomas train was really fun to run. But now that we're running diesel, no. Polar Express all the way. Thomas with Steam is a really long, crappy day. You need a night watchman or something at super long shifts. So the diesel just makes it so much easier. But then running it with the diesel's boring. Polar Express is really fun, but it goes a little late, but it's quite fun in comparison. Though the train's not as fun to run because it's fewer cars. So, yeah.
So what prompted the change from steam to diesel for Day Out with Thomas? Just curious.
The day's sucking.
Okay,
Like, you needed to have a night
guess
watchman. You would have to show, like, without a night watchman, someone has to show up at 3 a.m. to light off because the first train's so early. And then you're putting a lot of miles on the engine. It's hot. There's 12-hour shifts for everyone involved. And that's it, not even thinking about someone having to flip their schedule to be a night watchman. And there's no requirement for it to be steam. So when we were able to buy the Diesel 7 and it was able to do it, it's so much easier. You put a knife switch in, you press a couple buttons, it go, and then you go take the diesel and knuckle into the train and you're there. Like, it's just so much less work and way better. So that said, it was more fun to run. When we had 10 cars behind 491 on the 3.5%, you could actually open the throttle far enough that it stopped doing things if you were hooked up all the way. It was like, oh my God, I can run with the Johnson bar for 200 feet. And then you're at the top of the hill, and yeah, that was that. It's the most embarrassing thing I've done on the railroad besides screaming beans.
Screaming beans?
In one of the videos, I screamed beans when BNSF came by. That was pretty stupid. It embarrassing? I don't know. Nothing's coming to mind right away. I'm sure there's something stupid. I'm sure that...
I'm sure there are dozens of go in from the outside moments that I've missed.
I'm sure, yeah. Most embarrassing that I could think of off the top of my head was when we were rebuilding the suspension of the 491, and I crashed the mill. That was a little embarrassing. They were waiting for me to finish the last part, and I'd machined all the freaking parts. And if you've ever looked at the spring and kicking of a locomotive, there's a lot of pins and bushings, and so it was like it was almost 1,000 hours of machine work. And I was working on the last part as they were lacing up the rigging, and they were waiting on me to finish the last bit. And this hole was a brand new casting that the DNS had that we bought or traded for or something. And so I just had to machine a slot for the pin to sit on, and then a little counter bore for part of the head. And it was just being a pain in the butt because it was a long way to cut. And it wasn't a true hole. It was just part of a hole, like a crescent moon kind of thing. And so you didn't have equal tool pressure, so it was a pain in the butt to machine and all this stuff. And my boss like kept coming over and asking about it and was getting frustrated. And he was like a total POS bad boss anyways. So you're always like stressed out when he's stressed out because, toxic stuff like that. And he came over as I just finished the last cut and was like, "Are you fucking done with this part?" Excuse the French, but that's literally what he said. And I was over it, and I was like, "Yes, I'm done with the part." So I grabbed the power feed lever that makes the mill run really quick, and I thought I had switched the direction to bring the part down, and I hadn't. And so I just rammed the boring bar into the part, threw the part across the shop. And we're talking about like a 60-pound chunk of cast iron that went flying, 20 feet away towards the shop door. And I broke the boring bar in half and added a nice dent in the table of the mill. So, yeah, that was a little embarrassing. But, maybe don't be a crappy manager. So, that always helps. Let your people do their work.
A+ for the performance, though.
Yeah. He then screamed Jesus Christ and as it flew across, and then it became the Jesus Christ saddle. So, which one is it? Oh, it's the Jesus Christ saddle. Oh, okay, yeah, that one.
Etch a pair of wings onto it.
Pretty much. Gotta put a sticker on it or something. Jim3535YT. Has anyone ever smoked meat in the smoke box of a wood-burning engine? I don't know, but that is on my list of videos to film. I like smoking ribs. I like making brisket. I have a Traeger at home that I got used for a really good price. And I love making barbecue. And so I don't know if it's going to taste good at all, nor do I think I have enough flavored nice wood, like firing up a K-37 on mesquite. Break out your wallet, Jesus.
I mean, or you could just come to Arizona after a storm. We get mesquite trees down all the time.
Well, bring a trailer of mesquite and we'll fire up the 491, and we'll do a brisket in the smoke box. Yeah. No,
If
I don't
had a
know
trailer,
if
I would do that.
I'm sure someone has done that before. I'm certain that someone has smoked meat like that. But I don't know. I've never seen proof or heard stories myself. And I feel like cooking on a steam locomotive YouTube is probably stuff that will do well on YouTube. So that's on my list of videos to make, actually, next time we fire up. So
funny story relating to this. One of Tom Scott's many spin-off channels, I don't remember what it was called, but it was a thing where they all went and did some secret task without telling anyone, and they had to like report it back to the other three.
And Gary went and made bacon on the locomotive. Yeah.
Yes, he cooked bacon on a shovel in the locomotive firebox.
Yeah, that's the thing, the traditional footplate breakfast, as it were. It's a nice cup of coffee or tea, and then bacon and eggs on the scoop, you know.
Except, like, the British idea of bacon is just weird ham.
That is true. It is weird ham. It's not as good as our bacon. And we'll fight you to the death over that. Round 2. Mm-hmm. It's coming up on 250 years. We'll see you here.
Apparently a major concern is the bacon getting drafted off of the shovel, which is hilarious.
Well, yeah, if you've got the blower, or if it's while running, yeah, the draft is ridiculous. I mean, I couldn't believe it. The first time when I fired over Cumbres, firing up from Chama to Cumbres, 15 miles of 4+%. You go to do the back corners with the scoop, you put the shovel in the box, and you turn the shovel to dump the coal in the back corner, and it's trying to rip it out of your hand. That's how ridiculous the draft is. That's one of the things that I want to.
Found it.
That's one of the things I want to try and do.
Haven't there been locomotives that have actually eaten shovels?
Oh God, yeah, that's happened to most every fireman. Not me. I just threw mine over the side on accident.
There we go. I posted a link to the video where he cooks the bacon in the locomotive.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah. So presumably it would be best to do while firing up and not while running. That would be my guess. Wilmington Western's famous for cooking pork chops and firebox, or pork chops and hot dogs in the firebox. Life's hard. You just had to eat around the burnt and raw. That's the problem with coal burning fires is, I mean, it's super hot. So it's really, really hard to get like an actual cook, but yeah. So what's on the list of things to do? Wesley stuff. How do porters, tank engines, etc. get water without losing all their steam pressure? The injector doesn't really reduce steam pressure that much, so you just fill up the tank and then inject like any other engine. I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. At Kataf, the Alpha, is that how it's pronounced? How did the 9000s 3 cylinders work, or 3 cylinders in general? 3-cylinder engines are weird, and the 9000s are extra weird. That's worthy of some MS Paint and maybe some pictures. Hang on, let me get some pictures first. The 9000s are really cool engines. The Union Pacific made. They were the longest rigid wheelbase locomotive, I believe, in the States at least. I know the Russians built a 414-4, but I think the drivers were smaller. And on the 9000, it's a 412-2. So, I mean, it's just objectively too many wheels, but it's a giant rigid frame engine. And they had a couple different setups that made them work, so let's kind of talk through them here. So here we are. Here's the 9000. It's kind of got a mean front end with the pumps on the front, too. But you can see that there's a third cylinder in the middle here. I use yellow. But, yeah, really, 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 really long wheelbase, lots of drivers. So we have Walschaerts valve gear here, just like normal on the outside. But then it's from Sir Nigel Gresley. They've got Gresley valve gear on the front, where the piston rods extend through the front heads like a European engine. And then they are linked with a set of bars here that actually time the third cylinder. And so the pins and bushings and offsets in these levers here actually set the third cylinder. So there's a pivot right here, and then there's one link here connected there, and then the other link's connected here. And so the first two cylinders set the timing of the third cylinder. It's kind of a unique and interesting design, and I guess a lot of the three-cylindered British engines had this type of valve gear at one point. But it's what sets the third cylinder, and they're actually run off of they're on a 120-degree offset instead of 90. On a normal engine, you have 90 degrees between sides, so that when you have power strokes, you always have one power stroke. But with a three-cylinder engine, they're 120 degrees apart, so a little bit further. So you have rod there, you have a rod there, and then you have the third rod there so that it's balanced. And the third cylinder is actually up at an angle. It slopes like this, and then it's got like almost like a normal car main rod that then runs to a cranked axle, like it's, you know, a car or internal combustion engine, which is really cool. But yeah, Luna Likes Train says, fun fact, it's not actually 120. Well, neither is the 90 on the wheels is actually 90, but most valve gear things are actually never actually the exact 90 or exact values that they are because reasons. Yeah. But yeah, frame rate 24 says you couldn't center a three-cylinder engine, and yeah, that's true. You could get to a point where one of the three wasn't firing, but you still had two, so you wouldn't really have the, oh god, nothing wants to work problem like a two-cylindered engine is. So technically, the three cylinders are a better design, but they're a little weird. Some of the 9000s, they had 87 of these things, or 88 of them, 9,000 through 9087, so 88. They scrapped all of them but this one, but some of them got dual Walschaerts valve gear because the Gresley gave them trouble. So they put a second eccentric crank, an eccentric rod, an expansion link, and then ran the linkage on the inside on one side. So you had dual Walschaerts on the one side, which is kind of wacky, but they're very neat. And Wings is correcting me. It's Gresley conjugated valve gear. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, they're nifty, bizarre locomotives, and they sounded really cool. We had, you know, chuffing in 6.8 instead of 4.4. So pretty cool.
Someone get the Adam Neely video.
Yeah, someone get the Adam Neely video.
I gotta ask, where does the third piston hook into? Does it have like its own separate rod or something?
Yeah, it's got its own main rod that then is off of the cranked axle that I was talking about.
And I believe the cranked axle is not the same axle as the one connected on the outside.
That's correct.
So it's one driver ahead.
It's the number 2, I believe, on the 9000s, which is kind of weird. But you couldn't have a super long main rod because then you'd have to have clearance on all of the axles for it. So they had to kind of come kind of close. So it's not technically balanced, but they work pretty well. So
it's connected to both sets of wheels?
Yeah, but all the rods, I mean, they're connected via an axle anyways. So instead of just a normal straight axle, it's got a crank put in it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Gresley conjugated valve gear is really cool. The front bits are basically a mechanical calculator that calculates the position of the central valve. It's actually really cool.
That is, I haven't really seen it working or done analysis on it myself, so that's cool.
And surprisingly, they actually are a better application for freight locomotives than the high-speed expresses they were put on in England, because at those high speeds, if you've ever like grabbed a yardstick and shaken it really quick, it starts to bend and flex a lot, and that's essentially what would happen at high speeds, whereas at lower speeds, you wouldn't get that.
Yeah, less vibration, less high cycle. Yeah, that's cool.
Like when Mallard did its 126 mile an hour run, didn't it have some weird overheating of the central cylinder that pertained to that whole situation?
It wasn't due to the Gresley gear. It was just that the middle big end bearing on that main rod just melted, basically.
That's fine. You don't need bearings to stay cold or anything. Let's see. We've done a fair amount of chat questions. Let me go back to my my pre-asked questions. How am I enjoying my new place? It's pretty solid. I like Colorado. Colorado's nice. The specific house. There's no place for my drum kit, man. It's kind of sad. But other than that, not too bad. Let's see. The Reason for and Operations of Switchbacks by HO Scale Modeler 4501. I meant to grab some reference of Marshall Pass or the Monarch Mine switchback before I started this. Let me see if I can go find it. Switchbacks, I mean, the reason for them is we could not build the railroad any other way, and we had steep cliff to go up, so we did this. I mean, that's kind of that, where you couldn't have turns for whatever reason, and you had to just basically climb up the cliff, and you couldn't turn back. You just had to go backwards. And, yeah, that sucks. But operationally, they suck because you're running, you have to stop and then throw a switch and then go. So you're delaying what you're really doing. But the DNRGW had one at the Monarch Mine. So, hey, there we go. Thank you, Wings. Now, let's see. Here we go. Boom.
Did you put an image up?
Nope, I just did now.
Okay.
So yeah, this would have been the Monarch branch, which stayed for a long time and actually ended up turning into standard gauge at some point, which is kind of hilarious. We had this realization that 491 and the Diesel 3011 that we repainted in the video both ran up this switchback. Just, presumably 40 years apart. But when you can't make the turn, the valley's not wide enough to do a turn back, you just pull the train ahead, switch the switchback, and back up the next leg. So,
do I get to tell people I've run on a switchback with the hardcore map, or does that not count?
I mean, it counts, right? Sort of. This is Corkscrew Gulch. Corkscrew Gulch was on the Silverton Railroad, wasn't it? Or Silverton Northern?
The Silverton Railroad, yeah.
Silverton Railroad.
The turntable housing was actually picked up and moved to the Silverton Northern in 1906, though.
Because moving buildings is a thing that Colorado does. But yeah,
this is a gravity-fed switchback. So the train would park on the upper leg. It would set the brakes. The engine would run down, turn, and go to the lower leg. And then the brakes would be released, and the cars would roll down over the table. And then it would back up onto the train again and keep going to keep the locomotive on the downgrade for each leg.
That's so stupid. I mean, I get it, but come on. That's a vibe. The reason for keeping the locomotive on the same end facing the same way is so that you didn't have to deal with the water sloshing so far. Because when you're going up switchback, I mean, you're doing the Colorado Railroad Museum, but straight, where you go up steep, down steep with the engine, basically the way you're tipped. And if your water level's not sky high, you get a problem at either end because you're not ready for that much pivot of water, So,
yeah,
definitely
what
a challenge.
Are the grades at the museum?
3.5 on one side, 4 on the other.
Huh. Well, yeah. Silverton was 5 1/4, so
Christ.
It's a bit more extreme.
Yeah. So if you did 5 1/4 both ways, I mean, you're talking about a 10.5% change in grade. So your water moving, I mean, would move so much that you would either have to stop and build water or blow down, or you wouldn't be able to work up the hill because you would be carrying water over into the engine. So that would be why they had turned the engines around and did that 5 1/4%. Madmen. Yeah. So what a neat thing. Let's see. Okay, what do we have next? From Ryan, I can't pronounce your last name again. Baikie? Baikie, sorry. Simple question, why do trains have bells and whistles instead of just one or the other? I've been meaning to film Bells 101. I actually originally wanted to do Bells and Whistles 101 together, and then Whistles 101 turned into the monster that it is because I like loud things, and, we talked about whistles for an hour. So Bells I'd say it got cut, but I didn't even shoot it. I just started shooting the Whistles 101, and it was like, oh, this is gonna be a thing. We'll split these up. But really, I mean, they're just two different warning devices for slightly different purposes. Where a bell is not near as loud as a whistle, but it still cuts really well. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in Whistles or Bells 101. But the neat thing about a bell is that it has a minor overtone series. It's one of the few things that has a minor overtone series rather than a major one. Oh, you just knew I had to bring a guitar into this, didn't you? Anyway, when you play a note, whatever note, I wish I had an acoustic in here. That would be better than in this electric guitar. But it's not just the note. The note that you hear, the buh, is the fundamental of the note. And then every sound that happens has the overtone series established with it, at least if it's like a pitched sound. Where normally, with a major overtone series, you get a specific pattern of notes and you start to get major thirds in there, which are the happy note when you play the guitar, right? Rather than a sad. And bells have a minor overtone series, which means they get the sad note instead of the happy one. And so they sound ominous and spooky, and they cut through in a much more aggressive way than just a whistle or anything else does, because they sound unnatural, because they're designed to be unnatural. And that's what makes bells really cool and a really effective warning device. But that's why, like, AC/DC's Hell's Bells works really well. They're playing a minor guitar scale, which I would play, but AC/DC would demonetize me, so we won't do that. The bell is playing in a minor overtone series, and it fits with the minor scale of the guitar part of the opening riff. And so that's kind of one of the really cool things about bells, is the overtone series is weird. I'm sure there's other stuff that has a minor overtone series instead of a major one. Yes, harmonics, William Nimmo. Yeah, exactly. It's the harmonics that come up with to accompany the fundamental note. They sit over the top of it. It's like, yeah, when you pick actual harmonics on the guitar, you're hitting the different nodes, and the different wavelengths cause different things. So bells have minor harmonics, which make them neat. But yeah, bells are a less loud and more omnidirectional, close warning device used for, not deafening people necessarily, unless it's children ringing them at the museum, and in which case you slowly go insane.
I mean, the bell's still pretty loud.
Yeah, it's just not a zillion thousand dBs like the whistles. I mean, they have to be loud to be a warning device, but typically, you'll use the bell if you're doing switching around the shop or something. Hey, I'm going to move, but I don't need to blow your eardrums out. So, okay, let's go back to current questions. Train animator.
Detonator bomb is my warning device.
Indeed. How do water brakes work? Because you've been wondering how just water will slow the train down, weighing over 100 tons at the minimum. Well, water makes the engine work, so it also makes it not work, right? for a very easy explanation. Let me get our MS. I mean, it doesn't even need paint. So they just run steam to the other side. It's not truly water, but they run steam with the engine in reverse, basically. And the Rio Grande had special lines plumbed in, and it's called the water brake because it gets the water space steam is what it gets, where the water level is. But as soon as it comes out of the pressurized environment of the boiler, it gets into the cylinder where it is allowed to expand, it immediately flashes to steam. So it's not truly water, but it is a brake that relies on running the engine backwards. And then it's really efficient because it's relying on the expansion of the water, turning into steam and all that stuff. So thermodynamically, it's a really efficient way to run the engine just in reverse. So that's...
Are you saying it's pretty much equivalent to throwing the Johnson bar in reverse while going forwards?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much the exact same thing with the throttle open, except it's set up to be a better version of that. But they were better than friction brakes for the Rio Grande because if you rely on the friction brakes on the engine, you can heat up the tires and the tires can fall off the wheels, or you can burn through brake shoes. And you don't want to do either of those things. So they gave water brakes to almost all their engines. It's like a Jake brake on a semi truck or anything like that, or dynamic brakes on a diesel locomotive.
So, tangential to the topic, is air brakes just the same thing except you use air instead of water?
No, air brakes are totally separate. They apply the brake shoes mechanically still using air pressure. You should watch Air Brakes 101 and you'll learn all about it. Shameless plug. Question from Armagon. Again, he's gone, but anyway. If I could rebuild any narrow gauge engine in the same vein as the T1 Trust, what would it be and why? Ooh, this is a fun question. Rebuild one that existed. Probably the C25. That thing was cool. The Denver Nürburgring Western 375. Neat engine, chonky 280. That would have been cool to see, or a C21. Either one of those, the Crystal River engines. Those are all neat looking locomotives. And would have been neat to have.
Want a Mallet?
They didn't. Duh. That's the answer to the question. The Uinamali. Duh. Not the 375. Give us the 50 or the 51 back. Yeah. No, those are badass. How did I forget about those? I don't know, because I'm in Rio Grande mode, apparently. But yeah, the Uinta 2662s. Yeah. And their Sumter configuration with the tender and the extra water and just... How much locomotive? Yes. Yeah, those would be great. Or we could just build no 101. So, you know.
And it goes around ES&D worthy corners.
That's very true.
Well, technically it would be an L75 because we recalculated that.
Yeah, I know. It's 101 just...
101 is just limited cutoff, man. The engine needs to be heavier. Just make it out of lead, bro.
Just do what they did for the Cedar Point amusement railroad engines and make the headlight out of 1/2-inch plate. We need more weight. What's the running board made out of? It's 2 inches thick steel that they cut out. Oh, good God.
Why?
Because it needed more weight, because it didn't have enough adhesion. So they just made all of the locomotive accoutrement out of the most heavy, stupid crap they could.
I'm thinking of a 1-to-1 scale locomotive with traction tires, and it sounds extremely cursed.
That is pretty cursed. How often does it wear off as soon as you open the throttle?
Just get 18 bottles of bullfrog snot.
Something like that. Let me go get the giant Lionel ZW out of the museum office. And anyway, Slandered Stone, call me a dirty foamer. You're a dirty foamer. But you got to know, what is the most eligible locomotive at the museum to be brought back to operation that hasn't been already? None of them? I don't think we would. If we were to, technically 318 maybe, because half the work's been done already.
Yeah, but like 318's boiler is still shot.
Oh
right?
yeah, the boiler's done. It would need a new boiler, but that would be the thing.
And then 191 worked for a logging company. So
191 has a wrought steel boiler, so it would also need a new boiler because it has danger to just go bang for no reason. So, yeah, air pockets in pressure vessels. You don't want that. That's bad stuff. Chris Kelly, thank you. Hi. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
So you're saying the CB&Q Northern is not on the list?
As much as I would love to run the 5629, there's just no. I mean, the track it's on is not even connected because. Oh, sorry. He said most eligible locomotive at the museum, not steam locomotive. The tunnel motor, and I'm gonna get it running. I don't actually know if we're gonna do that, but it looks like it wouldn't be that hard, and I really want to try, and I have backing of some people that want to do it. So it's not official. It's not a plan. I'm not speaking for the Colorado Railroad Museum right now. Paul, if you're watching. But I think we could probably get the tunnel motor to run, the SD40T-2. The lathe shaft is not stuck, but you can't move it too far. I think the injectors are frozen. So unfreeze the injectors, fill it full of diesel, fill it full of oil, fill it full of water, clamp the welder to the battery knife switch, and press the button. So, with probably a little bit more than that, but that's kind of what we're hoping for. So, anyway, let's go back to some of the pre-asked questions here. Is the fireman school on the Durango and Silverton still running? I don't think the DNS has ever done one, but the Coombrace and Toltec does and is still doing it. So, run the 191 for the 4th of July special. Boom! Finale! 1812 Overture, except it's the 1880 Overture, and yeah, let's not do that. How would the train crew stay awake during a long trip? The railroad runs on a few things, coffee and whiskey. Hopefully not at the same time. But back in the day, I mean, even now, the train crew brings their own grip, which is the slang term for their bag. And they'd bring whatever to stay awake. And I mean, back in the day, the shifts were all over the place. But these days, we have hours of service limiting you to a 12-hour shift on the engine. And once you finish that shift, you go dead. And then out the door you go. You have to stop the train, secure it, and then be picked up wherever you are. So hopefully you don't get stuck in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, a lot of steam engineers would have pots of coffee on the back head, and they stay warm and all that. So.
Bold of you to assume there wasn't alcohol in that coffee.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day.
10 wheels, 10 drinks.
10 wheels, 10 drinks, man. So that's an inside joke from our dearly departed Fred Oster, who was a volunteer at the museum for a long time. A great friend of ours. And he passed away about 3 years ago from brain cancer. God rest him. But he was a carman for the Rio Grande for 42 years. And so, I mean, he was just the embodiment of what the attitude of that railroad was. And they had a policy that they would, tell people if they're going out to the bar after work, like, hey, be safe. If you're on a motorcycle, 2 wheels, 2 drinks. If you're driving a car, 4 wheels, 4 drinks. And so you just extrapolate that and go, so what do the engineers do when they're running the locomotive? 280, 10 wheels, 10 drinks. There you go. Lord, the railroad. Yep. Luna likes trains. You have a Loco model, 3 cylinders, and double wall shirts. You can send a video over Discord if you want to throw it up on stream. I appreciate it. I think I've seen you send some of those things in the Discord before. I might take you up on that when I do a Valve Gear video, but perhaps another time. Let's see. Nathaniel gifted 5 Heist memberships. Thank you. That's wonderful.
I got one.
Did you really?
Yeah.
He can finally watch the videos. Oh no. Oh, that's awesome. Now you can watch me talking smack about you in every video.
Watch the dog videos.
You can watch the dog videos. There's a couple, at least one of those. Anyway. What's my favorite narrow gauge railway that's not in the U.S.? I know I don't know much about places outside the U.S. How dare you accuse me of not knowing stuff about not America? Yeah, I don't know about too many narrow gauge railways. I tried to say both railroads and railway at the same time. That didn't work. Railways. But I know the Festiniog over in the UK is pretty cool, and they've got some really cool locomotives. And I know Leighton's been there, and I really want to go see it someday, even if it means I have to see a double fairly. But that'd be fun.
Oh, you could have given the cop-out answer of half of the White Pass in Yukon.
Oh, that's true. I didn't know they ran into Canada. Huh.
Yeah, they went all the way to Whitehorse. I think they've cut it back to Carcross now.
Oh, neat. And Sticks the Machine giving 5 Heist memberships. Thank you. You're so kind. Lots of Green Lanterns, yeah. And Chris Kelling with the top chat.
Such a good movie, wasn't it?
Indeed. $5. Your first HO scratch build was a Southern Pacific ST40T-2 or ST40-T2. I don't know. Is it T2 or ST40T-2? Either way, yeah. The tunnel units are cool. Anyway, let's see. In the Deer Valley Tech Tree episode, I think you've got your wires crossed there. You said why a Mastodon is your dislike for the TW just in the early series. So you'd like the SP480 2914, but Mastodons are just kind of a weird wheel arrangement where when you have more drive wheels in and around the firebox, it gets complicated, particularly in a narrow gauge variety. But you end up having conflicts between the ash pan, the firebox, the draft, and the drivers, and it's not ideal. It's why they went to having trailing trucks more often than drivers back there. So a 480 always just kind of feels like, Why didn't you do something else? But they're definitely cool, and some of the ones that exist are badass. I mean, the Norfolk and Western 475 is a really cool engine. It's the only one I've seen in person, though. So, SD40T-2. Thank you, Andrew Beeman. Another red lantern. We haven't streamed enough. I'm seeing all these colors in the lanterns now. When you put a steam locomotive away for the night, is it normal to leave the cylinder cocks open or leave them closed? From Jared Stafford. And leave them open. Open up the cocks and let it sit. From Plenty Sticks, are there any plans to extend the track of the Colorado Railroad Museum? I think in the long-range plan there might be. If we get some of the neighboring properties, if that ever is a possibility, we could, but for now, probably no. And I don't think that's like the major part of the master plan. They're thinking about more facilities and, I don't know, being able to store rolling stock indoors. Again, not speaking officially for the museum, but that's kind of more what we're looking at rather than more of a run, which, more of a run would be fun, but is what it is. Blake's Trains and More asks, what's my favorite steam engine besides 491? Didn't say 491 was my favorite. What's my favorite diesel locomotive and what's my favorite electric locomotive? I don't know if I have favorites of diesel and electric or steam. I don't know if I have like one particular favorite of any of those. I love all the Rio Grande stuff, Rio Grande Southern stuff, and steam, of course. Some of the UP big power, like the 9000s, are awesome. I think those are really cool locomotives. I love the 4449 because it was the first steam engine I saw when I was a little kid. Diesels, they're cool. And electrics, we don't really have straight electrics too often around the state, so I'm really just not terribly familiar or into them. And that's all of the pre-asked questions. Okay, so we can get back to plugging through the ones that have come in live here.
Did you check VC text real quick?
I did not, but I can. Let's see.
If the answer is yes, I'll put this question at the top.
Sure, why not? Of course that's what she asked. My sister asks, what's my favorite Pokemon? You know this answer. You know that I don't really know that much about Pokemon. I always thought Blastoise was cool because he had the guns. But yeah, that's what I got. I'm not a Pokemon person, but she is. She works for them. So anyway.
Oh, that's cool.
It is neat. Does art stuffs. Anyway, back to questions. Wings and Strings. Look at you, putting text chat questions. Has railroading influenced my music in any way? I'm not sure. More of my music influence comes from dad rock, obviously, if you've listened to anything that I've put out ever.
Same.
and I mean, for railroading stuff, I mean, like, not specifically railroading, I don't think. A lot of it is, I don't know, it's more based on the musicians and that sort of stuff. Like, there's railroad songs, and I certainly drew inspiration from those for the Railroads Online soundtrack, which, by the way, will be available on Spotify and whatever platform you stream on. How have I forgotten to plug this? Soonish, whenever the distributor gets done doing distribution things, because I uploaded it yesterday. So, because QMA removed it from the game for reasons. F's in chat. Yeah, but that'll be there. So, yeah. Prairie Rail Productions. Could someone with no railroad or mechanical experience show up to a railroad to volunteer and get accepted? Hi, that's what I did. That's how it goes. Bacon M13. Thank you for the super chat. You're too kind. Bacon M13 is the man who's made the P cups too, and unfortunately, I don't have the P cups in here. And I'm on camera. What the heck am I doing? They're all in the other room. I'll have to go get those. But
where's my P cup?
Yeah, where is he? Shipping to Australia, man? Come on. That's going to cost more than the $50 you just donated. For your project locomotives, what would a Heist Railway Museum lineup look like? What would be static and what would run? For your project locomotives, a Heist Railway Museum. Are we talking like Colorado Railroad Museum engines or just any engines or?
I mean, I feel like if we're talking about a theoretical Heist Railway Museum, everything would run.
Well, no, That's too many mouths to feed. Even sitting, they find ways to break, or get mad.
Did you say mouths or malaise?
Yes, well, mouths. Too many mouths to feed. You'd have to pick 3 steam engines right now at the museum is so much to keep up after. You probably wouldn't want too many. So I mean, I guess kind of depends on what your setup is and what your pool is to draw from. If it's anything, if I could pick my own choo-choos, I would probably, I'd grab the 4449 because it's really cool and I like it a lot. I would probably want something. I can't pick between the girls. If we're doing I would pick one of the 3 that run at the museum because I love them all. But I can't say which one I would pick because they will hear me and then they will kill me. So we don't want to do that. And then the third one, 3 engines be. It would be cool. It'd be cool to have another big engine. Even a big boy would be neat. But that's so much, work. If I had an unlimited staff, sure, yeah, we could have a big boy or something. But something else that would be more something that screams early railroading, Western cowboy, something like Eureka or Glenbrook or Inyo, it's something like Inyo probably actually, a 440 like that, just because you see it and it's just yes, this is American media. People see it and go, look, that is train. That is the emoji of train that I know. Not anything that actually is like a modern locomotive, but the one that goes chug-a-chug and looks like it's in a Clint Eastwood movie. Let's see. Sir Liv, thank you for the top chat as well. What has been your most brown trousers moment? A time when you thought, oh, chew, I'm going to die on the railroad? I don't think, I've never been oh God, I'm going to die. The scariest moment was the moment we talked about, not to throw anyone under the bus who's watching this live stream. But the time that 491 got 2 safety valves open, both pulling water, and the pressure gauge got up to 218 PSI. Yeah, that would be that'd be the scariest time. Yeah. Are we
able to talk about how that happened without throwing anyone
under
the bus?
Yeah, we can talk about how that happened. So basically, we think the locomotive's foaming. And foaming is not when children are watching trains, but when the boiler water actually becomes foamy, like when you're boiling over a pot of pasta and you get it, bubbles on top. And when you get all the bubbly water, you can't really tell the actual water level of the boiler. And so it's a really scary condition to have. And sometimes it's obvious that they're doing it, and sometimes it's more subtle. And so we think 491 was foaming because we were doing Polar Express, and we were going around, and everything was looking fine. Both the engineer and fireman at the museum, you're both checking the water because you do such a vast tip, and it was looking fine the whole time. And we leave the North Pole, and we start coming down the hill, and we're getting close to the crossing, and so we're almost level, and it has almost a full glass of water, still going slightly downhill, and it's it should only have an inch of water, and it's got 10. And people named person names, Steve, Joe, one of them, my firemen looked at the water, and we looked at it at the same time, and both went, that can't be right. That can't be how much water. No, that doesn't make any sense. It can't have that much water right now. And he blew it down just in case. And we start going up the hill in the station. And we're not even to the steep part of the hill, and it starts pulling water in the engine. The exhaust goes from chug, chug, chug to whoomph, whoomph, whoomph of mushy water being sucked into the engine. Not bad enough to cause any damage, but it removed the lubrication, and more is sure to follow because you're starting to draw a vacuum of water, basically. And so I raised the bar up as high as I can to limit the travel of the valve so that we're not trying to blow the valve apart. And I shut the throttle back as much as I can and open the cylinder cocks to make sure we're blowing all this water out. But that means that I just decreased my steam usage incredibly, and I had just started to liven up the fire with those first couple of big chuffs. And they must have had a roar and fire in there because the pressure starts to skyrocket. It's just coming up quick. The first safety opens. The second safety opens. So she's got 3. The third one never opened. and I'm not entirely certain why, or if it opened we couldn't tell because the first two were so loud. But two safeties open, and they start sucking water through the safety. And so they're literally pulling a vortex of water from the surface out the safety. And you can tell because it goes from psh to really, really, really loud when you're sucking liquid through it. And I mean, that's one of the, like, probably the second loudest thing I've ever heard is two safeties being open, sucking water through. And I mean, we're going uphill still through the cut. So I'm trying to get the engine off the level and try to keep the thing going. So I'm trying to get up top so we can park where it's flat. And the pressure just kept going up. I looked down at the gauge and it's at 218. And I can't remember. I think that was when we had her set down to 175. That doesn't make sense, though. Maybe it was still 190. I don't know. The 491's pressure, when we did the Form 4, we realized we had to bring it back from 200. So she runs at 175 now. So she's actually a K32. But yeah, it got up to 218 PSI. And know that boilers are tested to quarter over, so it has been tested to 250, and it was in no danger of anything like that, no explosion or any crap like that. They're built with a safety factor of 4, which is why we had to lower down from 200 to 175. So, I mean, still a huge safety factor at that point. But yeah, we got to the top, stopped, and the safeties were still going. They went for minutes. And I thought for sure we were going to have leaking heads or heads blown off. And it was like so audioly or aurally, that's the word, stimulating. Like it was scary. And so we came out and stopped. And I mean, we went from having a full glass of water on the downhill to barely having any water in the glass in about 5 minutes from the safeties dumping like that. So it was, yeah. Oh, look, it's people in chat. Look, hi, friends. Brett's going to spoil it and say it was his fuck up. Oops. Yeah, she's popping at 190 normally at that point. Okay, that makes more sense. I was going to say if we went from 175 to 218, yeah, that would have been a bit much. So she's running at 190 at that time. Yeah, so, yeah. You're imagining Jared Harris from the Chernobyl miniseries explaining this with a bunch of red, blue placards. With every step, they have pulled the steam locomotive back like a slingshot. Nobody knew that the throttle could act as a detonator.
That is how a K-37 explodes.
Raise the power. Yeah. Yeah, I slapped Brett in the face with a folder and yelled at him to raise the power, and he said, yeah, we'll give you, we'll make this thing a K50. Let's go for it.
Brett says he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, no, he really didn't, because, I mean, it was the engine foaming that did it. So it turned out our boiler treatment that we were using at the time really liked to make the engines foam once they had used it for long enough, I guess. It had done something. So we've changed boiler treatments since then and fixed the problem. But yeah, it turns out treatment's really important. So
I have an interesting question regarding that.
Yeah.
Would you want to use the blowdown to get rid of pressure?
It doesn't really get rid of pressure because it just expands right away, which is why the blowdown is what gets rid of water and the safety gets rid of pressure. It's because you're getting from the steam space versus the water space. So it's you could get rid of pressure with the blowdown, and I mean I've had to before when we blew 491 dry when the throttle broke. Yeah, you can do that. It's just not great.
In this case, with the safeties sucking water through them, would you want to use the blowdown to get the water out of the safeties?
No, well, so the thing that's scary is that sometimes the safeties don't want to reseat once they've started pulling water. So we potentially could have been in a dangerous situation where they never close. Thankfully, they did close and they did seat, but we could have sucked the whole boiler out the safety valve, and we would have had to drop the fire and everything at that point had it gotten a lot further than it did. So no, you once we were no longer sucking water into the engine really hard, and we were able to go up the hill, keeping the blowdown shut was better because we wanted to make sure you kept water of the firebox.
So how do the safeties refuse to stop pulling water once they start?
So
how could you suck the boiler completely dry? I'm having trouble envisioning how that happens.
it's a weird thing within the geometry and the tolerances of the safeties. Safeties are like the one thing on a steam engine that have tolerances sub a thou, like in tenths of thousandths of an inch. And so they have to be really precise. And when you suck water through them, you break them, or can break them, typically break them. And so it can be really easy for them to get cocked or stuck open after that happens.
Okay.
So
I get what you're getting at there, but wouldn't that just continue venting all of the pressure out of the boiler? Like, I'm specifically stuck on how it would continue sucking water specifically.
The force is so strong that it creates a tornado. Literally, if you could put a camera in the boiler, you would see a vortex tornado of water being sucked out from the water level. There's a great video somewhere, I'd have to find it again, where there's a British engineering firm for stationary boilers did a series of tests with a boiler that had a window in it. And they were able to simulate carryover into the throttle, not into a safety, but it's the same process of water getting sucked up through. And once that starts and that cycle starts, it continues to propagate because of the demand, the vacuum of atmosphere comparatively, and the fact that the water surface tension is trying to hold it together. So yeah, makes a little terrifying tornado. And that video exists somewhere on YouTube. I'll try and one of you look and see if you can find it, but we definitely want to put a link to that. It's a really, really interesting series of videos.
And you've got 2 more super chats.
I see that, yeah.
Assuming this is who I think it is, Seattle Ginge says, "What up?"
Hey, that's Marty. Hi, Marty. Sir Liv, thank you for the super chat. I think I actually did answer your question from way earlier in the live stream. You probably weren't here. What does it mean for coal to go stale? And I'm not 100% certain what the science is behind it. I've never run into that problem, where after they sit, the volatile gases in the coal go away, I guess, or the coal breaks down a little bit more, so it doesn't want to burn near as well. That's my best guess, but I've never had that problem personally, so hard to say. Super Cartoon Wars, have you run a geared locomotive, and if so, is there any difference to a rod locomotive? As we showed earlier, yeah. but
Somebody better clip that.
But no, I've not run a geared engine. But yeah, they vibrate lots. Anyway, okay, back to the questions. Let's see. But they don't work. There we are. From my sister again. Has Thomas the Tank Engine devoured you yet? No, he has not, thankfully. Though with the way he stares at you, you kind of think he wants to. Anyway. Colton R. Magby, duplex or a triplex? The triplex from the Erie had the rear set of drive wheels in the wrong place, which is under the tender. Coal and water are needed to prevent wheel slip. Yeah, precisely. That's not really a question. I guess duplex or triplex is, but yeah, no, having your adhesion being reliant on your fuel source and water source to be there is not brilliant. And 3 engines, non-compound, is a lot. Duplexes are neat. I think articulateds are better just because they're more flexible, literally. Therefore, their roll's more flexible. But that's that. Pulitzer? I don't know if it's pronounced like the prize or not, presumably. How do locos get their numbers? That depends on the railroad. Railroads can be obnoxious about that. Back in the day, I mean, it was just, this was the first one we bought. It is number 1. It is Smitty Werben Jagerman Jensen. He was number 1. And then, sequentially 2, 3, 4, whatever. But most railroads tended to get into a point of kind of setting up a class, either as the prefix. So, like, the first couple numbers are the prefix for the class. Like, in the case of our Ks on the Rio Grande, the 450s and the 460s are K27s. The 470s are K28s. The 480s are K36s, and the 490s are all K37s. So just by, it starts with 49, it is a K37, and then sequentially kind of 0 through 9 is then the 10 K37s. And I say sequentially kind of because the shop, being the lazy people that they are, picked whichever stencil they had lying on top of their stencil rack for the first locomotive number. and went with that because 490 was, I think 490 was actually the first, but then 491 was not actually the second K-37 finished. The first one rolled out in like April, May of 28, and then 491 was in June, like later. So, and then they all say rebuilt August on the smoke box. So, you know, Rio Grande, bunch of drunk bastards. So, A101A, Heist, where do I think the Uinta articulateds would have gone had they been saved from being scrapped? This is a really sad story. They almost got saved, and I know the guy who almost saved them. They would have come back to Colorado. A friend of mine who, I think he still runs part-time at the Cumbrason Toltec, but he's a brilliant mechanical engineer, and he had been traveling down to see them and saw those engines in the 70s, wherever they ended up in Guatemala, if I'm remembering right, and had an arrangement with them to keep them saved and was going to buy them and bring them back to the United States, back to Colorado, specifically in Chama. And they went back the next year, and they were gone. They were cut up, scrapped. The tenders were left, but that was it. No communication, just they got cut up. Just, oops. Sorry. Sucks. Those would have been so cool. So, anyway. Andy Connolly. Hey, Hyce. Greetings from Boston and Maine territory. Up in massive Tushits. Oops. Any plans on coming to New England for East Coast Steam? We got some Mikados and a few badass switchers. Yes, you do. I have no plans to do much traveling for seeing Steam, although I do kind of have a standing offer to bring my whistle and go play at the Nevada Northern, apparently. I don't know what go play means. I think they want me to fire at least. I don't know if I'd be qualified as an engineer or anything like that, or if we could make that happen. But so that might be in the nearish future, hopefully. But East Coast, I don't have any plans, but hey, if you work at a railroad in the East Coast and you want me to come out and do some filming and do some content, shoot me a message, DM, or an email. My channel email's listed on the page. So I would love to come out and see other engines and do all that stuff. So. Noteworthy 59. Often in railfan videos, you hear steam locomotives making chuffing noises when they're standing still or moving too slowly for the cylinders to account for them. What are they coming from? Air compressor. Most coal-burning engines, at least, and some oil-burning engines, but not all. Most of them probably actually don't for oil burners, but a lot of engines have the air compressor's exhaust plumbed through the stack, and they're a little steam engine. So when they go, bang, bang, when the pump does its thing, it sounds kind of like the engine's exhausting. And in the case of 20, it's kind of funny. The 11-inch air compressor is close enough to the cylinder diameter that it sounds really similar to the chuffs. I've been caught thinking that 20 is chuffing in 6.8 before because the air compressor will cycle in the middle of the exhaust beats. And it's like, that sounded like it was chuffing like a 3-cylinder engine. What the heck? And no, it's just the air compressor. So. Does the museum have any plans to restore any more steam trains to be put back in service? No, not right now. Ninja 73. What is the estimated max speed of the 491? 35-ish. No one really knows. There's no true steam engine top speed. They just kind of get to the point where the counterbalance does the thing and or you run out of valve travel or the ability to put steam in fast enough with the valves, or the cutoff or is set weird, or etc. Most engines are usually mechanically limited based on vibration to whatever speed it is, and on the Ks, it's probably not much more than 40 mile an hour. The old adage is 1 mile an hour per inch of driver diameter ish, little less on the low end and a little more on the high end. And that's kind of true, but not really. So,
well, you also got to consider narrow gauge track, anything over 20 miles an hour, and you feel like you're gonna die.
That's true, except for the Valley Line. Alamosa was the longest. Alamosa to Salida, the Valley Line was the longest straight piece of track in the world, and it was dual gauge for at least a time.
If I might interject, a certain Leighton Moreland has said you should restore 318 and run it on the Circle Line.
No, Leighton.
Yes, Leighton. with Leighton on that. I mean, like, of the remaining ones, it's the most likely candidate. It's just not an objectively likely candidate.
Yeah, new boiler makes it a little challenging, and taking it apart when it's a beautiful display locomotive kind of makes it tough. So, let's see. Derpy Possum. What does it mean for a locomotive's fire when the smoke comes out of the stack a certain color? If the smoke comes out nearly black initially before fading to white as it trails off. It's all dependent on the draft and how much fuel is in there. If you've got a lot of fuel and not a lot of draft, you end up with a black smoke. Or sometimes you don't have enough draft to clear the smoke out the stack, actually. And so the smoke will sort of accumulate in the firebox, the tubes, and the smoke box. And then when you give it a little draft, it comes out black violently and then trails off as the draft establishes more oxygen feeding the fire correctly. So it's really just a condition of how much fuel. More fuel, less air, more dark. More air, less fuel, more clear. And then when it's white, it's because that's steam, and you can only see it when it's cold, really. So, Chris Kelling, thank you for the super chat. Do you know if the music from Railroad Tycoon 2 is in the public domain yet? Based on copyright law, not for another, 60 years or 50 years. That said, it doesn't seem that the publisher cares, because they're uploaded on YouTube without issue, or maybe they're getting the money for it still. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's truly public domain.
We did, or rather you did, go to Jupiter Studios.
This is true, yeah.
And Jupiter Studios was the producer of the music for the soundtrack, and Mark and I actually got permission to do covers of it, so...
That is true. Yeah, we have a beautiful recording of Wings playing the banjo part for Banjo Solo, I think is the name of the song, which it sounds great. But it was definitely talking with the original sound engineer who did the soundtrack for Tycoon 2 and 3. A, was really cool, but B, it sounds like all the rights ended up with Pop Top, who then maybe sold them to someone else or whatever, and for covers, we were cleared to do it because it wasn't the original recording, but the original recordings are under a different copyright than performances, because copyright is just a load of malarkey. Yay, United States legal system, folks. Anyway. So.
D for Disney.
D's for Disney. Snake form. Let's see. Mick, you got to strike Derpy Possum's question off. We did that.
Oh. Well, you just barely answered it.
Anyway, Satiric, has the CRM ever thought about painting a real steam locomotive blue for day? No. Stop. No more questions about Thomas. Ethan, this is one of my favorite questions on here. Hang on, I gotta roll the game down just because this is gonna do a thing. What makes me a good demo man? If I were a bad demo man, I wouldn't be sitting here discussing it with you now, would I? There you go. Hopefully that didn't murder the audio quality of the stream too bad. I used to play Team Fortress 2 competitively as the demo man for a long time. I have 3,000 hours in that game. Pay no mind. Aiden Smith, what welding process, electrode, filler wire / rod are used for steam locomotives? Is it a type of thing where some work better than others? It depends entirely on what you're welding and why. There's a lot that goes into welding engineering. It sounds like you know some welding things based on the question you asked. Most of our stuff, because it's so thick, has to be stick. And then we have to match our filler rod to the strength of the steel, particularly in the application of a boiler if we're doing that. And we usually end up having a certified code welder come out to do any boiler work if we have any of that stuff. Even when we're putting studs in for the jacket, we had to pay a real boiler guy to come out and do it because we don't have anyone who's pressure vessel certified. We have guys that are certified and guys that weld great, but pressure vessels, you don't want to mess with that stuff. But if it's really critical and engineered, you got to match the filler rod to the material and make sure that the tensile strength is the same. Otherwise, it doesn't work out. But if that's not the case, usually most everything we do, if we're just welding around, is 60-18 or 70-18. And then a lot of stuff just ends up getting done MIG for the smaller stuff because MIG is just hot glue but with steel. But the fun thing is a lot of parts on the engines are cast iron still on our engines. So we actually end up doing a lot of brazing because the welding procedures for cast iron are, I mean, if you're familiar with welding, suck. And in some cases, you can't even weld to it. But yeah, that's a whole crazy deep engineering topic we could get into. But we end up doing more braze really than welding as far as repairs a lot of the time. Sir Live with the super chat, thank you. Silly question: if a train crew is caught short and take a leak in the water tank, would it have any effect on the loco? You just pee over the side, man. You don't pee in the water tank. If you did, the saying about peeing in the ocean, well, it still applies when it is 18-ish fluid ounces of PP and 6,000 gallons in the tender. So anyway, let's see. What is the gauge tolerance for a narrow gauge? Oh, sorry, Mick.
So you're saying nothing bad would happen if we peed in the tender?
I mean, you'd get kicked out of the museum and get put on the registered sex offender list for having your dingle dong out in public, but Anyway, Cyberclaw Ulfer? Did we lose something there? Anyway, what is the gauge tolerance for an air gauge railroad? It depends. And I would have to ask Art to really know for sure. I know that in the sharp curves, he shoots for 36.5 inch because 491 likes to shove the gauge bars or shove the joint bars in on the one side for whatever reason. So, no more than like 3/4 of an inch to an inch, but definitely you see stuff that's plus a half. Rue Parker Jones, thank you for the super, I guess, is it still a super chat, top chat if there's no question associated? Anyways, thank you.
No idea.
B-Man, hi there. Hey. As someone slowly getting involved in more local museums, have you guys determined firebox condition off of a basic visual inspection in the past? Visual inspection and a ultrasonic thickness test. Yeah. That's usually what you do in both cases. So you grid out the firebox, and in the firebox and in the belly of the boiler where you see the most wastage, you tend to do like a 6-inch grid, and you get 5 measurements in each box of UT thickness of how thick the material is. And if it's too thin, you have to cut it out and replace it or replace the firebox entirely, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, usually visually it's very obvious when there are problems. So anyway. Oh, look, you just super chatted your question that I was just answering. Thank you. All the super chats. Super chat from Scott. Hey, Scott, thank you. Do you ever run counterclockwise at the museum? Is there uneven wheel wear from only running clockwise? I just answered this question on someone commented this somewhere, and I just answered it. We do run both directions. We tend to run clockwise more often just for a lot of different reasons that we can get into in a minute if people are curious. But yes, there is uneven wheel wear. 491's number 4 flange is getting vertical because of the excessive running around clockwise. It's not a problem. It's nowhere near like an FRA defect or a wheel defect. But you can tell the wear is different. But it's not that critical for us, really. Like, it doesn't make that big of a difference. And we do try to even it out. It's worse for the track when we run clockwise all the time, because as Art keeps telling me, the rail runs ahead of the train. It moves away like you're pushing bread dough with a rolling pin. So it starts to squeeze out ahead of you just on a much smaller scale. And, okay, well, it's the Colorado Railroad Museum. We only have a half mile of track. It's not that big of a deal. Well, it's the busiest half mile of track when we're running. What chunk of railroad sees a train every 2 minutes all day long in other parts of the world? So we end up with curves doing weird things and stuff more so than the wheels having problems. But yeah, the wheels do wear differently because of that.
Just gonna insert myself here and promote this question that is relevant. Does the clockwise preference because it's easier to run clockwise?
It's a lot of things.
Probably easier for the engineer to see around the corner.
Engineer being on the inside is one of them. If you're running steam, it sucks for the fireman because you have to protect your side, and when your side is always on the inside, I mean, either you're waiting for and praying that people don't go places they're not supposed to, and you fire, where there's no public access, and then you watch the rest of the time, or you fire really quick. or you have to have a dedicated person in the seat, which if it's hot out and you're running one of the deckless engines, that sucks. And it annoys you as a fireman to have someone that you've got to get past for the injector or ask to run the injector for you. You don't have full control. It's kind of a pain in the butt. The steeps, when we go counterclockwise, the grade is steeper, the worst part of the grade, and it's also a longer pull. Well, no, it's not a long, the steeper section is longer. If we go clockwise, it's like 1.5%, short bit of 3.5, and then it levels off again, but it's like 4% pretty continuous and long on the counterclockwise side. And the wind tends to blow to the east, coming down through the canyon towards us from Golden. And so when we're running on or when we're running clockwise, the cinders rain down upon us and not on our neighbor's field that wants to catch fire and caught fire once, which is really why 346 wears the Ridgeway, because the fire department said you got to put a hat on that thing. Get some protection for that choo-choo. It's a pyro. Yeah, so that's most of the list, I think. Anyway, Highball Productions, thank you for the super chat. Is there any chance 491 could run on Coombrace for some time? Not really. It has some things that make it not compliant with the FRA, so we would have to do some work to it to make it FRA compliant first, and then we would also need $70,000 to truck it one way because it's over height, over width, over weight, and you need a ridiculous truck to move it. When we looked at bringing the 493 up from the Durango and Silverton to get as a second locomotive before diesels came available back in 2016, it was going to be $70,000 to truck it across Colorado. So presumably it would still be, $70,000-ish 6 years later, and still, even though Antonito's a little bit less distance, it still would be quite expensive and prohibitive to do that. So 491's not liable to go anywhere.
And you'd need $70,000 to truck it back too.
Yeah, also that. So
Oof.
that, and when we took 20 down there, I think it about broke even with all the charters and stuff when we took it to the Coombrace and Toltec, but that was still not cheap to truck it, even though it's so much smaller. So I mean, it's really cool. It's really fun. We have a lot of fun, and it's great for the rail fans and everyone out there. But I mean, it's fun, maybe not necessarily the most financially smart thing the museum could do, but it is cool, and we get to help interpret Colorado history. And 20 is going to go on more adventures, I think, next year by the sounds of it. So it's going to be fun. Let's see. Rotate your tires. It's not how that works. Nathaniel, thank you for the super chat. You will finish Payload Switchback and publish it. Also, when is the next TF2 stream? Oh, Lord. I don't even know if I still have the hammer file for Payload Switchback. That was a map I made for Team Fortress 2. It wouldn't need too much to finish, though. That'd be fun. I'd have to just get free time, which I don't have right now. And next TF2 stream, see the first answer. I need a little bit more free time. The live streams are kind of few and far between. So hopefully sometime soon, but we'll see. Rue Parker Jones, thank you for the super chat. Not Steam, but what's my favorite cheese? I'm lactose intolerant, so none of them. Just kidding. I love cheese. Cheese just hates me. Yeah, it's sad. Do I have a favorite specifically? I really like pizza, so I really like mozzarella and parm as a combo. If I'm making, I use Freedom cheese a lot, which is Leighton's term for Kraft singles, which isn't really cheese, but it has a time and place.
There's something about real sheep's milk feta that is really good.
Oh, feta is good. I love feta on like a gyro or shawarma. And cotija and Mexican applications. I don't know. Cheese is just great. I wish it did not give me sadness. Super chat from Brenda Huber. Hi, Mom. Thank you. Love you. Miss you. Both my mom and sister in the stream. I need to swear less, apparently. Radio Isotopics. Thank you for the super chat and making me giggle with the amount. You've mentioned the proposed DNRGW 482s before. Do you think that the wheel arrangement makes sense on the narrow gauge, or could a 284 be better? 284, the K37 should have been a 284. There, I said it. The amount of weight that's on the rear axle of the K37 is absurd. The Rio Grande was junk when they built those things and did the math. Anyway, I mean, the problem with 4-wheel trucks on the narrow gauge is that you have tight turns, and it's kind of harder to make those happen. You certainly could, and obviously we had 10-wheelers and everything. So, when you start getting that long of a wheelbase, you start to counteract the point of narrow gauge. So that's probably why they never made the 482 or the 284. In general, it seems that the 284 locomotives that were built later were really good locomotives, but that was just by the fact that they were well designed and well built, not necessarily tied to the wheel arrangement, I don't think. So I think either would work. It just depends on the rest of the engine. And yeah, the K37 probably should have been a 284. Yeah, the rear grand said that there's 18,000 pounds of weight on the trailing truck, and there's 40,000. So, just off by over 100%. It's fine. Math's hard. Okay, let's see. Heritage Unit 1989, favorite non-operational locomotive at the museum. Ooh, probably the 5629. That's the big CB&Q Northern that's there. It's really cool looking. It just looks sleek. It's a big Northern. Well, it's not. It's actually not a big Northern. It's actually kind of a small 484. But it's really cool. And it's always one that's fun to dream of. So. Ryan Simmons, is there any plans to go on a tour type trip and going to a bunch of railroads and recording it? Absolutely. I really, really want to do that. I need time and money to do that. And, it's kind of the name of the game. And I just took a massive pay cut by taking the job at the museum and lost a lot of vacation. So I'm kind of hedging my bets against doing that, but for the purpose of getting more stuff at the museum at least. So hopefully it's possible in the future, but right now it's a little challenging. Rusty Rails Productions, thank you for the super chat. What does it mean if the coal smoke is orange, and what locomotive is oldest at the museum? If the coal smoke is orange, sometimes it can get that real, I wouldn't call it orange, but it can get that kind of brownish, weird hue, and that's usually because of high sulfur content in the coal. And it gets real stinky. Yeah, that's never too much fun. That's not good coal smoke smell. That's stank. It's like dank, sad Pirates of the Caribbean ride mixed with fire. And what is the locomotive that's oldest at the museum? It is the 191. The Denver, Leadville, and Gunnison are originally DSP&P, Denver, South Park, and Pacific 191, which is over parked by the loading area. And it looks old because it was backdated to its original appearance, but it's 1880, followed by 346 in 1881. So it's not that much older than our oldest operating one.
Bound says sulfur bad.
Sulfur bad. Yeah, precisely. Stinky. Michael Ramsey's transporter clone. Does it bother you when standard gauge models are lettered for narrow gauge prototypes? Like the Bachmann K37 that's just a 280 that's standard gauge. Yeah, it's a little cursed. Or their standard gauge engines lettered for the Durango and Silverton and stuff. It's a little silly, but it's kind of whatever. Jack Carson's railroad videos. So where did the no big boy joke come from? When I was the CM for Railroads Online, it was a daily question. When big boy? Are you going to add the big boy? Are you going to add the big boy to the game? Hey, you know what this game needs? Needs the big boy. Every railroad obviously had the big boy. It's the most important locomotive of all time. Everything has to have one. Duh. Yeah, it just got really old, and I got tired of answering it, and so we made that's the spawn of the no big boy meme. I actually like the big boy. I think it's a cool locomotive. It was one of my favorites when I was a kid. And I still haven't seen the real one. Dang it. Ed, if you're watching, can I come visit? Hello. Anyway.
Have seen Large Lad in person. Do recommend.
Big Chooch, much loud.
Ed Dickens is a nice dude.
Ed is very nice. I couldn't believe it when I was at the Great Western Steam Up. He was speaking and whatever, and he saw me and some other guys hanging out, and he didn't remember my name. He got the M part right, but he asked me how my guitars were doing. And it's like, oh, no, he knows who I am. He just couldn't remember the name at the time, and that was kind of surprising. He's one of those guys that's really, really good at remembering people and knowing people, and is genuinely a really nice guy. So it's cool to see him in charge of the big chooch. Radio Isotopics, thank you for the super chat. Well, FND Columbia managed to make 8 mountains, and apparently they worked rather well. Some were even rebuilds of 460s and made it till about 1950. I didn't know about that, but there you go. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with having a 482 or anything like that on the narrow gauge. It just, you start getting out of the way of it, but I don't really know much about their rail line. And that's right. We did in the new tech tree for Railroads Online that's totally going to be made. Cries.
Oh God. Just made like a very cursed Berkshire 491.
Oh God.
Oh, did you just see the B-37 that I just
why you do this? Why you do this?
I know exactly how to get under Mark's skin with weird photoshops of narrow gauge equipment.
Yes, you do.
It's great.
All right,
think this
folks.
is bad. You should have seen the center headlight 20.
The center headlight 20 was pretty good. 20 with the Ridgeway was the one that you got Jeff mad. Jeff was mad at the center headlight Ridgeway. I showed him that in person. He just went, "No, we don't show people that. They'll ask if we can do it." And he had a little like mini soapbox, and it was very funny. Here's Wings' Photoshop of the the B-37.
I'm going to start sending K-28s with K-27 faces to the DNS and see what happens.
Okay, so Wings, B-37 with a center headlight and a Ridgeway arrestor.
Don't.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Don't give them ideas. Don't stop it. Oh lordy. Strasburg Railfan 90. Thank you for the super chat. Is there a standard for how a loco's wheels are quartered, or is it different between loco classes? If you mean like the amount they're quartered, I mean everything is 90 degrees unless it's a 3-cylinder, and then they're supposed to be 120-ish. But I'm not sure if you mean that or something else, or are you talking like which side leads? And that I don't actually know. I haven't actually thought about that. And you never really get to see both sides that often. So it's hard to know, does the engineer's side lead ahead of the fireman's side or not? And I wouldn't think there is a preference on that.
I recall having read about this a long time ago. The vast majority of the time, it's engineer's side leads. However, if I remember correctly, a very small percentage of steam locomotives... I remember the Pennsylvania Railroad being associated with this for whatever reason.
Because the Pennsy
had left-hand lead. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't question it. I just saw that and I was like, that makes sense because Pennsylvania.
Because the standard railroad of the world was not standard.
Yeah.
Just put 491 in Pennsylvania Railroad paint. See, look, they were green. Brunswick green.
Okay, Scott.
Did I hear a opportunity for one of the numerous Pennsylvania Railroad Baldwin styles?
Oh, is that style 9?
Oh my God. They're gonna do it.
One,
they're gonna do it.
Yeah, style 9. Style 9 would be the earlier one. If you put it into style 19, I will hate you.
Do it. Make us both mad.
Yeah, I mean, style 19 is basically style 9, except with no lining on the tender, and it looks so dumb. Like, why?
Scott Miller, welcome to the ES&D Brakeman. Thanks, buddy. We need to hang out and play games sometime soon or something. Let's see. All right, back to the questions. Mrs. Mick. Yeah, Mickley's wife. Hello, Miss Mickley's wife. What's my favorite way to eat a pineapple? Sliced? I don't know. But pineapple.
On pizza.
Pineapple's
and I'm
nice.
Not joking.
I don't mind pineapple on pizza. It doesn't bother me. I don't understand why it's such a thing. I mean, it's definitely not like a standard flavor profile for a pizza, but I get why people don't like it, but I don't understand the meme tier stuff associated with it. So
some of us simply believe it has no place on pizza.
we're not turning the stream into people being mad about food again.
I will not contest this further.
Hey Jake. Hey Jake. American cheese, Kraft singles, and a grilled cheese only. Get out of here with your Gruyere.
No. I never said that's bad.
No.
Okay. No more food talk. I'm getting hungry. Colonel Cactus, thank you for the super chat. What are some good resources for diagrams of old railroad cars like Pullman coaches and boxcars from the 1890s? That's an Armagon question. I am not a diagram person.
Lucky you, Armagon just got back.
I know.
Eric, do you want to plug Nathan's server for that? Because there's a lot of 19th century resources in there.
You mean the Railroads of the 19th Century server?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's a
Do
really
we have
good.
that in the noteworthy bits?
I don't know, but it's really good.
I would just say if you know someone in there, ask for drawings, and they might be able to get you something.
Yeah. They've actually got a lot of good stuff in there. Lots of also modelers come in there and they post their stuff. I will say that just keep it to pre-1900, or else, I mean, you're kind of going off into the weeds, which is, kind of self-explanatory. But yeah.
Wow, Toltree, thank you for gifting 10 Heist memberships. God, we've gifted like 20 on the stream today. You guys are too sweet. Thank you.
You got one for Pharma.
Oh, Pharma got one. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much. And a lot of frequent people on the channel got them. Wow, that was awesome. Colonel Cactus, could you get a link to the server? Yeah, if someone can get one and or paste it in chat for us, sure.
Yeah, link to Discord's Hyce's Discord, or link to the other Discord server that was being talked about?
The one that Eric was talking about.
And if one of you want to DM me a link, it will get deleted by Carl. You need to send it to me directly.
Perfect. Thank you. Radio Isotopics with another super chat. Thank you. And another giggle. Best and worst valve gears. You personally say worst has to be something like Gooch. Best is either Baker Young or Gresley conjugated. I've never heard of Gooch valve gear, so perhaps that's the one.
Gooch is Stevenson, except the links are flipped, and it has almost like a radius rod. It's very bizarre.
Oh, weird. Okay. That might be weird. I always heard that Southern wasn't that good because it hammered the heck out of the track, but I don't have much to back that up. Obviously, it was used on a lot of locomotives, so it couldn't have been that bad. And I've always heard Baker's the best because it's just better wall shirts, but I also don't really know much about Young or Gresley conjugated. Valve gears, there's so many different kinds, and they're not super hard to understand, but they can be like dynamically like a little challenging to get your head wrapped around. So it's kind of one of those things that I'm not an expert on, which is why people have been like, hey, Valve Gears 101. I'm like, maybe I need to research a lot, and I need to learn a lot more really before I would feel comfortable trying to speak to all the different kinds. So, or the majority of the kinds.
Learning about valve gear for me was very much a stare at it and it makes absolutely no sense until suddenly it makes all of the sense.
Yeah, until it does. East Broad Top is plenty of proof of Southern gear pounding the track. There you go.
Then just FYI for the chat, I have stopped taking questions. So unless I see a really good one, we're gonna go ahead and stop taking questions for now.
Yeah, thank you.
Assuming I got the time correctly.
We're at 2.5 hours in here, so yeah.
Okay.
I'll try and get through the rest of these, and then we'll probably call it there. But yeah, if you see any really good ones, feel free and grab them. Highball Productions. What happens if the wrapper sheet breaks? It depends on how you mean it breaks. If it gets a crack, cracks propagate, and then they become problems. If the sheet just like breaks, or if it like that's the failure point of a boiler explosion, I mean, that would be weird. It would probably eject the cab off the back, and I don't know what it would do. The tubes might try to get sucked out. It'd look really weird. That would be an uncommon failure if it were to fail. So Cyberclaw does Thomas have his own blanket and binky? No, he does have his own face cover though. Nathaniel, where in the U.S. have I visited? And if I've been outside the U.S., where? Oh, God, this is going to be easier with the map. Let me go get one of those states maps. Because I've been to a lot of the U.S. I've done a lot of road trips, thankfully.
Did I hear we're bringing back MS Paint?
No, I don't think we'll bring up MS Paint. We'll just start clicking through this live. Watch this. Boom. This is very exciting. All right. So I'm from Washington. So I've been there. I've been to Oregon, California, Nevada, Idaho. I've been to all these boys. Not been to Oklahoma, been to Kansas, been to Missouri, not to Nebraska, not Iowa, been to North, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, not Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. I can't remember if I sliced through Vermont or not, so we'll just say no. Maryland, no, not New Jersey. Or maybe I landed in New Jersey, but I don't know if that counts. Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, yeah.
Hey, North Carolina, let's go.
Yeah. Tennessee. No, not Kentucky. Tennessee, very recently. Miss Hyce has a lot of family in Tennessee and North Carolina. That's why I've been there and there. But not West Virginia. No, not those. Missing those. Missing the tip. Haven't been those places. Yeah, missing the Bible Belt. Though I really do want to go down to New Orleans. But I've not made it there, nor Hawaii or Alaska. So there's the U.S.
What did you do in Arizona, if you don't mind me asking?
Driven through it several times. Saw the giant hole in the ground.
Okay. Did you go see the Hoover Dam?
Oh, yeah, I've seen the Hoover Dam a couple times.
That's really fun to look up.
Hoover Dam's awesome. Yeah, I've driven over it a couple times. Seen the Grand Canyon. I haven't really spent too much time in Arizona, but I've done... with my family, 3, I think, road trips looping the west of the U.S. So, yeah, definitely seen my fair share of those. And then I've done that. The Washington to Colorado drive, I've done that too many times now. So,
I can't believe you haven't been to Cass yet.
I know. I haven't been to Cass. That's in West Virginia, isn't it?
Yeah. Eastern West Virginia in a cell and radio blackout zone because it's near the radio telescope there. That's
pretty much like the Durango and Silverton and Cumbres and Toltec if you have T-Mobile. Just no cell service anywhere. Radio Isotopics, thank you again for another super chat. Young basically uses one side to drive the valves of the other side. It's pretty ingenious and a surprising amount of engines used it. You know, the UP210-2s used it. That's weird. I'm going to have to do that. Mom says I've been to Maryland. Yes. No, that was when we went to D.C. Oh, you weren't on that trip. Dad and I were on that trip, and Johnny. Have I seen the Grand Canyon Railway? No. Anyway, that's the list of the U.S. And then outside the U.S., I've been all over Croatia, which is where my grandma's from, and that was wonderful. We actually toured and played music there. I played the world's most awful bass. God, that sucked. Yeah, I blame you, Mom.
World's most awful as in the bass sucked or you sucked?
Well, I mean, a little bit of yes, because it was a very not fun instrument to play. It's called a farlash, and it's a more Croatian screwed up bass than the Berda, which was the bass that I normally played. Picture an upright bass, but flat topped with a hole like an acoustic guitar and giant steel wound strings that are in pairs GGDD that you pick with a giant pick both at the same time. And the tension on the strings is so bad and the action is so bad and the instrument is worn so out that you have to use 4 fingers to press down any single fret. Yeah, that sucks. That bass sucked. But it was cool. It was fun.
She says you nailed it in chat, so.
Well, there, she was the director, so she could throw me under the bus if she wanted to. But yeah, it was fun. Croatia, Ireland. I've been to Dublin, and someplace on the coast of Ireland. I can't remember. We spent most of our time in Dublin. Marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade with the Colorado School of Mines marching band in 2016. They were like, "You're a jazz drummer. You can figure out marching band, right?" And I was like, "No, but I'll do it anyways, I guess." So they canceled our jazz gig. I was supposed to go with the jazz band, and then they said, "Here, have a 30-inch diameter bass drum you can't see over the top of. Don't run into anyone, and try not to kill all of the drunk Irishmen that want to play it because it's a giant drum and everyone's a child." God, that was a fun trip.
Marching band. I did not know you did that until now.
Yeah,
there's awesome.
Pictures somewhere. Yeah,
we've unlocked the deep Heist
marching band
lore.
gang unite.
More Heist lore. Yeah, I did marching band in high school. I didn't do it in college, but yeah, they stuck me in. And I mean, the Mines marching band is not like a hardcore crazy marching band. No offense, Bob, or the Mines marching band. it's not near as ridiculous as a lot of those bands are. And then like, so that was probably for the best, because my high school's marching band was really a joke. We were just not, I mean, it was just not serious business, really. I mean, they made me the sergeant at arms drum person who like would call the band when we'd have to go to attention. The director would, blow the whistle, and it's like, okay, and then we go band 10 hut, and everyone go 10 hut, 1 2 3, blah, 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 and then we'd march off and do the roll off and whatever. Yeah, except I was just a class clown, and so I yelled hand 10 butt, and everyone went 10 butt, 1 2 3.
Oh my god!
Half the time, and yeah, that was yeah. But
I just finished up 8 years of marching band, and my high school was no joke because we were one of the largest in our region. So, band 10 hut check and hit. I remember that, and I will remember it until I die.
Pretty much, right? But yeah, hand 10 butt. That was that was my joke. Anyway,
one more time, eh?
Yeah.
Just once more.
Uno mas. Yeah. Croatia, Ireland. We landed in Frankfurt to go to Croatia. But we didn't like go anywhere else. We got to watch German soldiers aim MP5s at my mom. Not really, but they questioned her about her Croatian instrument called the Prim that tested positive for explosives because it was nicely nitroglycerin finished, or nitro finish, like brand new instrument. So yeah, watched the 6'4" German tall Aryan boy go, how long have you had this instrument, while he's holding a literal MP5 submachine gun? And it's like, all right, well, maybe we're not going to Croatia. Maybe mom's going to prison in Germany. Sweet. All right. Heritage 1989. Do I still like to play Conduct Deluxe? The game got new explosions. Or it might just be them for the mobile version. I don't know. I haven't played it in a minute. Most of my video gaming these days is for YouTube, and you've noticed that I haven't put much stuff up on YouTube. Which means that, yeah, I haven't played much. A lot of time at the museum. I'm still working part-time for my last job, and I'm still doing the YouTube and trying not to go insane. So it's really busy, and I don't get a whole lot of video game time in. But I'll have to check that out. Mallard126, you just came from watching the Spark Rester videos. You wonder why most American locomotives have their smoke box doors secured with so many tabs compared to European ones. We work our engines a lot harder and slower, and we don't need to get in there that often, and that was a cheaper way to do it. Like, what's cheaper than having a bunch of studs in the smoke box to make sure it's sealed, rather than having a mechanism that's going to get blasted to death with cinders, or with the British stuff where they're running, like 100 mile an hour everywhere. You have force holding the door shut, really, whereas we're slogging up grade at, 30, 40 mile an hour. I mean, it's just not really an equivalent use case. And that's my best guess. I don't know for sure. That's me kind of spitballing there. But Chris Cannon, on several locks, I've seen a loop of tubes running fore and aft several times. Are these a coaling loop for something? On several locks? I don't know what that means. Loops of tubes running fore and aft several times. I don't know. I don't know what that's about.
So locos.
Locos.
It redirects to locks, and I think he's talking about the
he's talking about the radiator piping on the air compressor.
Yeah, that one. These
pipings, yes, those are for cooling the air from the air compressor. Look, it's me with Peaches. And someone asked why she called Peaches. I don't know. When did we start calling her Peaches? I don't know. It's one of those stupid things.
Wasn't the story literally like you thought Brett called it that, Brett thought Leighton called it that, and Leighton thought you called it that?
Precisely. And I'm sure one of those cases is true, but she's Peaches and it's the name that's stuck. So, but yes, the air compressor's on the other side. There's more radiator piping there, but this is to cool off the air because, I mean, it's in a steam-powered compressor. So it's hot. And then, this gives you time to cool down, make it stable for use throughout the train, and allows you to reduce more moisture. So, yeah, precisely. Okay, I can go back to this scene. We answered Mallard126's question. James Smart, have you ever piloted wood burner, and how different is it firing wood versus coal? I've never fired a wood burner. From what I've seen, dudes are pitching wood like all the time, just constantly, because it burns so fast. And that's really the big difference. And you have to have a much deeper fire with wood versus coal. So you're less in danger of getting a hole because you've got so much depth. But it's a lot of pitching wood. And there's no fire. Like usually on those engines, the doors are just chain run to open, and it's a pain in the butt. You don't have the air open door. It's the most cursed piece of rolling stock that I know of. I don't know, specifically a cursed piece of rolling stock. I don't know. DNR W50 is pretty cursed. The switcher. It's cool, but it's also pretty cursed. Though if we're going truly cursed, it's probably actually one of the geese. But, Jeff will kill me for saying that. So let me pull up a picture of 50. So everyone knows 50, whether or not they know it, because it's like the most common stupid LGB model, despite it being a one-of-one locomotive. And yeah, it's just goofy.
It's from the era where diesels or gas mechanicals were trying to look like steam engines, kind of.
Yeah, so we always joke at the museum that Pee-wee and 491 got it on, and then this is their baby, because it has side rods, it has external counterweights, it has K36 tender steps for locomotive steps. Those are tender steps off a K36. It has the 3-way coupler pocket. And then this thing is a 4-speed manual transmission locomotive, direct drive, with a V8, giant Cat V8 diesel engine that is started by a V8 gas engine pony motor to start, with that it has an electric starter. The clutch travel is ridiculous. The gearbox comes up through the floor in the cab and makes so much noise. This is louder than an AC/DC concert when you're in the cab. Like, you want earplugs and muffs. It is so goddamn loud in this locomotive.
And this thing runs?
Not right now, because the clutch is out, actually. So the clutch is stuck. It needs to be ground down because it's stuck in gear, and that's terrifying. It's got a crap ton of tractive effort and adhesion. I mean, it's so heavy. It's a super heavy engine. It's got worse axle loading than 491 does.
It's like 18,000, I think.
It's insane. The headlights are off of like a 50s Buick because they have the turn signals on top still. It's got a stack on it like it's a steam engine. And then the just the creme de la creme, the icing on the cake, is that the horn sounds like someone punching a clown in the face. It's awful. It is the shortest little meep of a horn. It's just cursed. It is just a cursed choo-choo.
I gotta admit, that sound you just made is not the sound I would have thought clown would make if you punch him in the face.
With the nose.
It sounds like it needs to be a sound bite.
Yeah, probably.
Clown disagrees. Don't punch the clown.
Yeah, sorry, not our friend Clown. We like Clown. We don't want to punch him in the face. He would probably kick my butt too if I tried to, anyways. So, yeah, don't wanna mess with him. Anyways, Mean Metal Mike, what's with the Rio Grande Bumble scheme? And if will 491 get it? They were yellow. No, only one of the K28s had it. 478 or 476 or 473. I can't remember. Wings probably knows. Oh, and they're gone. Oops. Maybe Armagon knows. I don't know. One of the K28s had it, and then 268 is down in Gunnison, Layton's baby, the B. Those are the only two that had it.
It was 473.
Okay. And shocker, running gear on a steam engine painted silver? The stupidest stupid that ever stupided. I think they painted 268 that color for the World's Fair in Chicago when they took the engine to the World's Fair, painted it all up like that to doll it up and make it look cool. And then 473 got it for a movie or something?
470. So actually, there were 2 more engines that had it.
Okay.
319 and 345.
Oh, that's right. They painted those so that they could blow them up. Yeah.
Exactly. 473 got the paint for tourism purposes, promoting the Silverton branch because they kept that thing on life support until like 1980. It's weird though because 268, I mean, built in 1881 or something like that, ended her 70-year career in that paint scheme, and it's just like so weird because there's a good video of 268 on YouTube, like pulling out of the Gunnison Roundhouse, like in like one of the last days of its operation, and the poor thing just looks beat to hell.
It was a C-16. They had hundreds of them, and there's only 3 left for a reason. So yeah, it's surprising that any of them survived, really. But yeah. That's kind of what the Bumblebee scheme's about.
Baldwin's basically indestructible if you treat them right.
Oh, Synth asks, has anyone figured out what the ribs are for on the back of the smoke box doors on the Regrand engines? And I forgot to ask that question. Is Brett and or Leighton still in chat? Hopefully, maybe. The ribbed for reasons smoke box door. I don't remember what that's for. The tank on top of the tender 268's extra, not extra water. It's the main reservoir. Same with 346, 20, and etc. But yeah, for the people that didn't catch, 345 and 319 were the 2 engines that they wrecked in the movie Denver and Rio Grande, which apparently is a really bad movie. I've only seen the wreck piece, but you can look it up on YouTube. They had a head-on collision between those 2 engines, and they had them painted up in the Bumblebee scheme for the movie. But yeah, they laid them with explosives because 2 steam engines running into each other wasn't going to be cool enough. And they they detonated the explosives the second the pilots touched. So it's really
appears to be dying.
Appears to be going just fine on my end.
It okay, now it looks like it's back now.
Yeah.
Weird.
So 268 was supposed to be in the crash.
Oh, really?
But they ended up actually dressing either 319, which was a C18, or the 345 as the 268
that's right.
for the crash.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't know why exactly they decided to spare the 268, but that's just what they
Weird.
did.
And it was the holy crap, Toltree, thank you. He just donated 20 more memberships. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Gonna have all sorts of brakemen this coming month here.
So your mom got one.
Did she really? Welcome to being a channel member, Mom. Yeah, it was 345 was dressed as 268 because it's got the driver, or the main rod connects on the number 2 driver instead of the number 3, like the C18s. The C18s connect on the 3, the 16s and the 19s connect on the 2 for reasons. Yeah. But yeah, 345's dome rings survive. They're on 346 right now. Bob Richardson got them after the movie wreck because he didn't like the domes on the 346, which, to be fair, they looked like junk. So yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, that's all the questions, I think, and yeah, I want to take a little break here, and I've got some more stuff I got to do tonight. But this is a great stream. Hopefully we'll be able to do some more of these. Please let me know either in the stream chat at the end here or in the comments when the VOD comes up if you liked it or you thought it was fun, because that would be, this is the first time we did one of these. Hopefully it was fun for me. Hopefully it was fun and interesting for you guys, and hopefully it was good to get questions answered and whatever. And we'll see if we can try and make these more of a regular thing if people are interested. So I had fun with it. Anyways, guys, catch you next time. Thanks for watching, and thanks everyone for all the love and support. The gifted memberships and the super chats were wonderful today. That's always really touching. So thanks everyone. We'll catch you next time. ES&D and pick up locos in chat. All right, guys, take it easy.